CN8, the Comcast Network, on this Wednesday night in May for Sports Talk. I'm your host, Ken Adelberger. You're in the fast lane with us tonight. We got a lot to talk about. Shocking story, somewhat of a depressing story. That runs the gamut of emotions, I'm sure, for St. John fans and Big East fans and general college basketball fans. The ouster today of Fran Fraschilla after just 2 years as the head coach of the St. John's Red Storm. A real shocker indeed. And here to help us kind of decipher and analyze exactly what's going on is Tom Luicci, the basketball reporter and writer from the Newark Star-Ledger. Tom, thanks for coming in tonight. Appreciate it. Take us back. This whole thing just kind of seemed to disintegrate from a meeting that Fran had with the athletic director back on Friday. What have you been able to decipher from that meeting, and what's transpired since?
It sounds like you know, from what people I've spoken to and what I've been able to talk about and uncover is that this is basically a tug of war or a difference of opinion between a boss, you know, and a worker, you know, and that's essentially what it comes down to. It's kind of odd to think that way with basketball coaches, such high-profile people. But Ed Mineta, the athletic director at St. John's, and the chancellor of St. John's, had a little different idea about the way they wanted Fran Fraschilla to do certain things. And Fran is pretty strong-willed, occasionally stubborn, and has a tendency, you know, to be perfectly honest with you, to rub some people the wrong way. Fran is very much a control freak, and he likes to be in charge of everything. And I'm not saying that in a derogatory sense, but he's very much a control freak, and I think Mineta and the Reverend at St. John's wanted a little bit more control since it's their basketball program. And this traces back to him at least expressing interest in 2 jobs, the Arizona State job that opened, and even though that was all done above board in the sense that Arizona State asked for permission each time they met and received permission, and then the Texas job, which I think may have hurt Fran the most because it seemed like he openly campaigned for it, and I don't think that sat well with the St. John's hierarchy because he has 2 years left on a contract, and there were a couple of other things going on administratively. I think there was a problem with an assistant coach. Fran wanted to elevate, and the administration didn't want him elevated, preferred a more experienced, you know, person in that position. I think there's been some question, nothing serious, no violations, question about some of the recruiting and some of the kids that have been brought in. They're good kids, you know, in essence, but a kid like James Felton from Marist last year, who was brought in, he only lasted 2 months, 3 months in school, and was dismissed from school, left the school, whatever the reasons were there. They brought him in as a freshman, didn't last. Now they have one of the best recruiting classes in the country, and it appears as if 2 of the kids won't be qualified academically. At least one certainly won't, and may not even come to St. John's. So I think individually those things are not cause for firing. But collectively, when you have a tug-of-war between a boss and an employee, they start to build up and they seem worse than they are. But I think a lot of it has to do with Fran having 2 years left on a contract, being paid fairly well, you know, going out and actively seeking other jobs.
So therefore, you mentioned all those things. Those are the fundamental differences that we talk about in managing the basketball program. It goes a lot deeper than the fact that he was maybe playing one hand off the other and trying to get a better contract through St. John's in an extension, because we've heard about this contract extension that they were supposedly talking about.
Yes, and they were discussing it, and you know, he has 2 years left, and I think at some point schools in general, and I think we saw this with Tom Penders at Texas, are just taking a stand now. They're paying these coaches enough money that they expect something in return. It can't be a constant, you know, the school's giving, coaches break contract, coaches leave. I mean, I think this may be the beginning. It may be something more significant than just another coach being ousted. I think what we're seeing is schools standing up and saying, hey, wait a minute, this is a big business. We're compensating the coaches, you know, at a high rate. We expect something a little bit in return. We don't expect Fran Fraschilla making whatever he's making, probably close to $500,000 a year, with 2 years left to go off and start looking for other jobs. I mean, he has an obligation to St. John's. The interesting part, I thought, was it didn't seem to me that it detracted or distracted, you know, Fran from the job he did at St. John's. I mean, he led them to the NCAA tournament last year. As I said, he had a terrific recruiting year this year, and it was looking like if he had stayed and landed one of the 2 kids they were still looking at, it could have been a top 10 recruiting year.
What then, Tom, a couple years ago when he took the job, he labeled this his dream job. He was coming home. He was coming to a place where he probably dreamed of coaching someday, to a big-time program in a tremendous competitive conference, and then for all this to kind of just fall apart within a relatively short period of time.
It is, you know, that's very surprising, especially because he seemed like such a good fit at St. John's. You know, he's a New York guy. You know, he had done so well at Manhattan, fit in. had a decent reputation with the media in the sense that, you know, at major functions he was always good and accessible. But I think as he got to St. John's and became a little bit more of a control freak, and again, I don't use it as a derogatory term because I've known a lot of great coaches and covered a lot of them. P.J. Carlesimo at Seton Hall was very much a control freak. But I think, you know, Franny started to reach for a little bit too much too soon. And I think that may have bothered the St. John's people a little bit. In a broader sense, I guess, have we seen the days of the Lou Carnesecca where a guy goes to a place and stays there for 30 years? Unless you hire an older coach, unless you go for a guy who's maybe late 40s, early 50s, mid-50s, who might settle into a situation like St. John's and say, yeah, you know, I like this place, as opposed to going for a younger guy like Fran Fraschilla. Do you see a problem there? I mean... I don't think there's any question. I don't think... The days of Dean Smith and Bob Knight and Mike Krzyzewski, as you mentioned, Lou Carnesecca, I think those are long gone. And as a matter of fact, a perfect example. Well, you mentioned it earlier. It's become a business now. Yeah, a perfect example this year is, and it's a smaller school, but it illustrates the point. Melvin Watkins at UNC Charlotte. You know, he had done a terrific job there his 2 years. It's his alma mater. The guy was a star player there, and was doing a great job. You know, we happened to be at his site in the first round of the NCAA tournament. Loved Charlotte. He grew up there. His wife's from Charlotte, the whole deal. Yet, when Texas A&M came calling with the right money, Melvin Watkins was gone. 3 years left on his contract. It's his alma mater. He's rebuilding the program. And again, I'm not faulting Melvin Watkins. He got a great deal. You know, he's got to worry about number one. But as you mentioned, it's just not happening anymore. We're just not going to see people. I don't believe coaches last 20, 30 years. We're talking college basketball with Star Ledger reporter Tom Luicci. And let's go to the phones right now. Jerry from Philadelphia. Jerry, you're up on Sports Talk. How are you tonight?
Fine. How are you doing, Ken?
Great, thank you.
I want to ask Tom the two-in-one question. Is this ethically right to fire Fraschilla? And secondly, if this were the ACC or the Big 12 or any other conference, Pac-10, would this happen in any other part of the country but the East Coast?
That's a good question. Probably, it seems like things like this of this nature happen in Big 12, SEC. You know, I think there's been recent examples. Whether it's ethically correct, you know, again, they're going to honor their obligation contractually, which is probably to pay him off for the last 2 years. There's a settlement that they're negotiating. So, okay, they're negotiating a settlement. So he's going to get money. You know, whether it's right ethically, as long as they honor their contract, they can do anything. You know. Coaches leave, players transfer, you know, players try to get out of letters of intent. It's just a constant, you know, there are no constants anymore. And it's what we were talking about, you know, recently. You're not going to see a guy stay for 20, 25 years. I'm just stunned at how quickly that this all happened. You know, the fact that they meet on Friday and all of a sudden Fran becomes a bad guy overnight. You know, there was really no inkling or no indication that this was brewing for a while, even though everybody knew that Fran had a few faults as a coach. I mean, again, I get back to this control, where he wanted to control every single aspect of the St. John's program, from how the kids sit on the bus to how they practice every minute, you know, that type of thing. And I think Fran has a tendency, and I happen to like him, we got along well, but I wasn't close to him. I didn't have to cover him every day. But Fran has a tendency to rub people the wrong way sometimes because he has to be so much in control. And what effect do you think this is going to ultimately have on the kids and a couple top recruits that he had come in? How does this kind of change things in the outlook in the future, the immediate future? Yeah, it has a dramatic effect, I think, immediately on St. John's recruiting class. First of all, they were involved with Anthony Glover, the New York City Player of the Year from Rice High School. He was down to St. John's, and it sounded like St. John's and Seton Hall, and he had developed quite a good relationship with Fran. So now whether he goes there, I would be surprised at this point, depending on how quickly St. John's moves and hires a replacement. So that could hurt them there. There's another kid, a junior college player from Pensacola, Florida, junior college in Florida. He's 6'10". He's one of the top junior college players in the country. It was supposed to be down to St. John's, Utah, Colorado, and Seton Hall. I would imagine that this must hurt St. John's again. So they could lose two players who could have elevated them into the top 10 in the country in terms of a recruiting class. I'm Ken Adelberger. He's Tom Luicci. We're talking college basketball here on Sports Talk tonight. What does it mean for the Red Storm for as soon as next year, and what are other future ramifications? Stay tuned. We've still got more college hoops talk coming your way, among other things, here on Sports Talk. We'll be back with more in a moment. Everyone on this Wednesday night to CN8, the Comcast Network, and to Sports Talk. I'm your host, Ken Adelberger, filling in
for Bruce Beck. I want to update you on a couple National Hockey League scores in Eastern Conference semifinal action. One series lead there. That is your hockey update. We are, of course, talking college basketball here tonight on Sports Talk with Tom Luicci from the Star-Ledger, and we were talking just before we went to break about future ramifications and so on and so forth of the departure of Fran Fraschilla from the St. John's Red Storm program. What kind of ramifications now does this have, Tom, say, on Seton Hall, on Rutgers, on Villanova, on the Big East in general?
Yeah, well, I mean, for the local schools, for Seton Hall and Rutgers, it's an opportunity, you would think, because it seemed to me that St. John's was finally again making inroads in terms of recruiting,
right,
and had pretty much locked up New York City once again. I mean, Fran and his assistants had done a great job of that, and if you saw, Seton Hall and Rutgers had to go elsewhere to sort of recruit because St. John's once again took over New York City, which is what they need to do. So in those terms, I think it could, there's an opening there for Seton Hall and Rutgers if they can take advantage, depending on who comes in here. In terms of the Big East, I think it's a little more unsettling because it continues the trend of new coaches in the league. And I'm all for fresh blood and new coaches, but the league has had such a dramatic turnover in the past couple of years. You know, just off the top of my head now, Tim Walsh is starting new at Providence. Al Skinner's in his second year at Boston College. Kevin Bannon's going to be in his second year at Rutgers. Tommy Amaker in his second year at Seton Hall. You know, the league is becoming dramatically different and new, and things are turning over quickly. And, you know, they have to, at some point, reestablish themselves and get back to where they were. If you remember the Big East, you remember the coaches were the stars, at least for a while. John Thompson, who's, you know, his program, let's face it, has fallen on some hard times. They've had some tough luck recruiting. They haven't been able to keep kids in school. You know, Louis was always there forever. Jim Boeheim's still around, but and Calhoun has still been there, but PJ's gone, and you know, it's just I think you need stability in the league to be good, and I think that's why the Big East is suffering a little bit.
Tom, let's go out to the main line. Charles from Haverford is out there, perhaps with some thoughts too. Charles, what's on your mind tonight?
Hi guys, great show.
Thank you.
I guess question and a comment for you guys. The question would be more for Tom, and I'm not sure how much time he's had to think about it, but if he had to put together a
that's all right, Zingham, he's ready.
Yeah. a top 3 or top 5 list of maybe logical replacements at St. John's, I'm wondering who he thinks the candidates would be. And then comments. I know you guys had talked a little bit earlier about the idea that the Big East has, I guess, fallen in regards to, I guess, the ACC or the Big Ten or the Pac-10, I guess, is how it proceeds as a conference. And I guess you talked about the new coaches, but I'm wondering if there's anything else that has to do with why the perception of the league has changed.
Well, I just don't think they've gotten quality players. As a matter of fact, I happen to be working on a story the past couple of days on just sort of tying together all the recruits in the Big East. And I spoke to 3 separate recruiting experts today from across the country. And going over their lists, there's maybe, of the top 100 players in the country, there's maybe, I didn't add it up completely, I'm going to say 12 to 18 top 100 players going to the Big East. When you have 13 Big East schools, that's barely 1 per school. That's not good enough, top 100. And I think if you're talking about top 15, St. John's with Eric Barkley was the only school to get a top 15 player. So what you're seeing is the Pac-10 and the ACC really dominating in terms of the recruiting, getting most of the top 100 kids. The Big East hasn't gotten it. And that's one of the reasons why, you know, even though they were pretty good last year, you know, they've had some hard times prior to that. And I'm not sure that they're all the way back yet. 1 year is not, you know, in my mind, all the way back yet. And they just don't have the base yet. They have to get players. It's really that simple. It's not very complicated here. They have to recruit better and do a better job. And maybe, you know, in some sense, having those young coaches in there will help because it's new, it's fresh blood. But in another way, you don't have the, you know, the long icons there, you know, beyond Boeheim and Thompson that kids want to go to the programs for. So they've struggled there. In terms of, you know, possible replacements, my understanding is that Ron Rutledge, the longtime St. John's assistant,
19 years.
Yeah, is going to at least oversee or administrate the program until they find a replacement. There's a couple. I would think at this point, this late in the season, they would probably have to find an assistant coach at a major school. And guys that have been poised and seem to be ready have been like a Carl Hobbs at Connecticut, Phil Ford at North Carolina. Now, I don't know if those guys would be interested. And I think one name that naturally has to come up is John Crest at College at Charleston, who's a St. John's guy and has built that program into at least some national significance. One problem is John Crest has the building named after him. It's kind of tough to leave the school when, you know, they've named the gym after you. So, but I mean, he's a guy that would come to mind immediately and may consider moving for St. John's. It's going to be very difficult at this point of the year because anybody that St. John's tries to talk to may find themselves in the same position that Fran Fraschilla was in. You know, first the school's going to go and get permission, and they're going to say, well, wait a minute, you're going to leave us high and dry in the middle of May? You know, we've done our recruiting, we're trying to get settled for next year. There are not going to be a lot of schools that will allow St. John's to have permission at this point. It's just because, not so much that they may lose a guy, but because it leaves them in a bad position. Right. Then they, in turn, have to turn around in June and start looking for a basketball coach. That's not a good way to do business.
Wow. We are talking hoops here tonight on Sports Talk. Hoop heads, get on the phone. Give us a call here. We're talking with Tom Luicci of the Star-Ledger about the Big East, about the big doings in the Big East here today. We'll be back with more Sports Talk right after this quick timeout. Exterior of Madison Square Garden is going to be pretty quiet because the Knicks lost tonight to the Pacers, so no NBA action left for Madison Square Garden, and no Fran Fraschilla behind the bench of the Red Storm come next fall when the Red Storm take to the floor there at Madison Square Garden. We're talking college basketball tonight. We are with Tom Luicci of the Star-Ledger. EJ in Wallington, what's on your mind tonight?
I just had a question about the fact of whether or not the appealingness of college basketball would rather decline because of the more mediocre talents in their programs, such as, you know, St. John's, Seton Hall, North Carolina, to the more appealingness of the NBA.
I'll defer to the expert.
Well, yeah, well, I think what you see happening, and there were 4 high school kids that opted for the NBA draft this year, is you're seeing fewer superstars than you used to, and particularly guys that stay 4 years. But I think if you watch this year's Big East tournament and this year's NCAA tournament, it was probably as balanced. And I've done 19 straight NCAA tournaments, and I've done every Big East tournament that they've ever held. It probably was as balanced and competitive as I've ever seen. You know, you get situations like Valparaiso this year. Mm-hmm. I mean, those are the type of things that can happen now in the NCAA tournament. Now, granted, Kentucky still went to the Final Four, and so did North Carolina. You know, but you know, Stanford is certainly not considered a power, you know, in that sense. And schools like that are getting their share now, a little bit more of their share of the pretty good players, which is what everybody's getting. And so what I think I'm seeing, you know, I think what people are seeing is more balance, better games, and more competitiveness, and more wide-open tournaments. The big, like I say, Big East tournament. Rutgers made it to the semifinals of the Big East tournament. They had a losing season. You know, I don't think stuff like that is a fluke anymore. I think because of the way that the talent is you know, structured, or the way it's spread out among different teams, I think that's the one benefit to all this. Would I like to have seen Al Harrington in college for 2 years? I would have loved to have seen him play in college for 2 years. And I'll be honest with you, I think he needs 2 years of college. You know, I think he's going to, really, it's going to hurt his game to sit on the bench for 2 years in the NBA. But that's his decision. It's his money. I understand that. Just, you know, from my standpoint, from watching this game, observing how kids mature and grow up, having done it for 19 years, you know, there's a kid I think would have, I really would have benefited from the entire college experience. He was a bright kid. You know, he was a well-spoken kid. He understood. He would have absorbed a lot at college and really would have had a good time at college. Whereas a guy like Tim Thomas, for example, I think he got the most out of college that he could get, which was 1 year. That's all he wanted to be there for, and he wanted to get to the NBA.
I want to jump back to Al Harrington for you in a second, but before we get there, talk to me a little bit about what Fran Fraschilla probably brought to the program from a style of play standpoint. What did he instill in St. John's Red Storm basketball that wasn't there in the
Brian Mahoney years?
The Brian Mahoney years after Luke Harness?
Well, I think he got the credibility back, and I think that was the most important thing, and he got that credibility back by recruiting Ron Artest last year, you know, one of the best freshmen in the country, and then recruiting, getting Eric Barkley this year, a top 10 player in the country. And they had a chance, as I said before, for a top 10 recruiting year nationally. And if Fran had stayed, I bet you they probably would have had that if they had gotten Anthony Glover from Rice High School. So, you know, when you look at that, I think the foundation was there for St. John's to be where it was, where the greatness that it had under Louis. You know, they had that kind of thing where, you know, the Malik Sealeys used to come in constantly, the Chris Mullins, you know, guys like that, the Walter Berries. You saw that year after year after year under Louis. And I thought Fran was getting to that point where he was establishing St. John's as a major force in New York City and as a major force in the recruiting trail in general because he was bringing in, you know, big-time talent.
Kind of interesting, that point, because I come from down by the Philadelphia area where obviously Villanova is big. And I'm just kind of curious as to whether or not maybe the St. John's people might have
Higher expectations?
Well, higher expectations, maybe even a more inflated opinion about their own program versus other collegiate programs that are still Division I, yet much more higher profile.
Sure. And as a matter of fact, you'll read the stories now. If you see a lot of the stories in the papers, as a matter of fact, I read one today, where it referred to tradition-rich St. John's. Well, I mean, the fact is, probably in the past 40 years, they've only been to one Final Four. But they have the tradition of 20 wins and Louis and constantly getting to the NCAA tournament, things of that nature. And it's in New York City, so everything is magnified 10 times, But in terms of being North Carolina, even Duke, Indiana, UCLA, it's not one of those programs. It's not. It's basically a New York City Catholic school program that has had success in the past and has tremendous advantages with Madison Square Garden, one of the most fertile recruiting grounds in the country, and the exposure that New York City brings.
Yeah, you bring a recruit into that building, you take a look at that and say, this is where we play our games, a kid's got to be salivating.
And France started to take advantage of that, and that's the main thing that he brought back to the program. He brought back respectability and credibility.
And I bring that up because it does seem kind of odd, as you said, you're surprised that they did this so quick. I mean, along that same vein, it seems very strange that they did it that quick. And that's why I think maybe they think much more of their program than other people do, or more than they should.
Yeah, and again, not to get into Fran bashing, because I never had any problems with him. I really didn't. But there were two sides to Fran. I mean, the public saw one side, and then, off to the side, or every day in practice, it was a little bit different, Fran. It was a little maniacal at times and difficult to deal with. And I can understand where Ed Mineta and the president of St. John's had difficulty sort of reining Fran in. I can see that happening. But and that push may have come to shove. It may be that simple. They had trouble reining him in, and then all of a sudden he goes off, interviewing for the Arizona State job, campaigning for the Texas job. He has 2 years left on his contract. They're sitting there saying, wait a minute, this is enough. Who is this guy? He's only been here 2 years. He's won 1 year. Sure, he's getting us great recruits, but what exactly has he done so far?
You want to get in on the conversation, don't sit by the phone. Pick the phone up and give us a call. We're talking college basketball here on Sports Talk tonight. After this timeout, we'll be back with more with Tom Luicci of the Star Ledger. More Sports Talk right around the corner. Talk here on CN8, the Comcast Network. I'm your host, Ken Adelberger, filling in for Bruce Beck. We're talking college basketball with Tom Luicci of the Star Ledger. Kind of curious, Tom, does Fran Fraschella's firing and the problems and so on and so forth, does it kind of set a bit of a dangerous precedent now, say for a guy like Tommy Amaker out at Seton Hall to become disenchanted or whatever and just take up and leave? I mean, I guess all coaches, it's their prerogative, at some point, they've got contracts to fulfill, and I happen to think that, you should be a responsible individual and live up to your obligations. But what happened today could happen a lot of other places in tomorrow, next week, next year.
Well, it almost did happen at Seton Hall. I mean, Tommy Amaker talked to Michigan. And if Seton Hall was not as, if Seton Hall had been less tolerant than it was, Tommy Amaker could have been forced out the way Fran Fraschilla was. It could have been the same kind of situation. But I think Seton Hall was a little bit more understanding, and Tommy explained to them that he had to talk to them and just wanted to listen, and that was the extent of it. There's a guy with what I believe is a 7-year contract. At the end of the first year, which is an NIT season, I mean, he's talking to Michigan. People are going to come back and say, well, that's a job you have to listen to. You can't just say no, and reject it out of hand. But I don't know. If you have a 7-year contract, if Seton Hall's giving you your first opportunity as a head coach, and all you've done is gone 15-15 and taken to the NIT, you really haven't established anything. Should you be talking to other schools? I don't know. I have a little bit of a problem with that, and I thought Tommy mishandled it. I wrote a column to that effect. Hopefully he's not going to still be mad at me the next time we talk, but that's my opinion. I understood he had something he had to do, but I thought he mishandled that whole situation. But it was almost a similar situation. If Seton Hall had said, well, wait a minute, we don't want you talking to Michigan. If you talk to Michigan, we're going to fire you, it could have come to that.
Chris from Bordentown, you're up on Sports Talk. I'm Ken Adelberger and Tom Luicci. What's up?
Hi, Ken. Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Great, thank you.
I'm calling about Rutgers basketball. I have a question for Tom about the general direction that Kevin Bannon has the program in, and about the recruiting next year. Where does Tom have them rank in the Big East?
Well, they're definitely on the uptick, that program, huh?
Yeah, I didn't rank them per se. What I did was I spoke to 3 of the recruiting guys this week, Van Coleman, Bob Gibbons, and Clark Francis, and I sort of compiled a consensus of their 3 rankings of the Big East schools. And for tomorrow's paper, they'll be 3rd in the Big East, although it's still subject to change because some schools are still recruiting. The signing period doesn't end until Friday. There'll be some summer late signings, kids that'll decide very late, will qualify late. There'll be some foreign kids who can come in late, some junior college kids come in late. So it's not really a complete list, and we still don't know what's going to happen with St. John's. How many of those kids are going to ask to get out of their letters of intent now, which they can do now that the coach has been fired? So that'll be kind of interesting. I think Rutgers has a real solid class. They needed numbers, they needed athletes, they needed size, and they got all three things. I don't think there's a great player in the class, but I don't think there's a bad player in the class either. In the past couple of years, before Kevin got there were a lot of bad players in those recruiting classes. Guys that are still on the team or have just recently left the team. Guys that were never going to play. I don't think Kevin has brought in any of those kind of players. I think he got 7 kids this year, or 6 kids, that will contribute.
Let's go out to Point Pleasant, Tom. And Jim, you're up next on Sports Talk. What's up?
Yeah, how you doing, Ken?
Great, thank you.
Yeah, I just want to talk about St. John's here.
Uh-huh.
We want to talk about St. John's.
Go ahead, Tom's here.
Priscilla thing's killing me, man.
In what way? Help us out. Tell us.
A diehard St. John's fan.
Yeah?
I mean, I've been rooting for the last 4 years. I'm a diehard Felipe Lopez fan. I mean, this is just killing me here.
In what way?
I love Fran, man. I mean, he was great. He brought it back like Louis.
Yeah, he did bring it back. There's no question about it. And as I said before, the main thing was he reestablished New York City as St. John's turf. That was the key thing, to start getting those kids, the Artests, and, to be able to go after the Anthony Glovers, and, just the past 2 years, the recruiting. That to me was what St. John's had to do, what they hadn't been able to do. Yes, they got a Felipe Lopez, but, it wasn't the kind of thing that, changed the program as everybody thought. Fran was getting kids who could change the program, and as we saw, he was a good enough coach to get them to the NCAA tournament this year.
And one of the few area coaches who actually was able to woo players from his own backyard to stay home. That's been a problem at Rutgers. That's been a problem at Seton Hall. It's been a problem throughout the country. We talked about, crossover recruiting in different conferences.
And St. John's historically has never been national in terms of its recruiting. They don't need to be, and they've never thought of themselves as national in terms of recruiting. They've always been in New York City, in that general radius, the 90-mile, 150-mile radius, whatever it is. That's the way they've always recruited, and that's all they need to do. They understand that, and I thought Fran brought that back to them. It's going to be interesting to see who they hire, because I think it will have a very major impact on St. John's.
What would the resume require? What does the next coach of St. John's? What kind of personalities do you have to have? What kind of talent does he have? What kind of X's and O's does he have to possess?
Well, just based on this decision, what happened in these past couple of days, it would surprise me if they hired a guy who was very strong-willed. It sounds like after what happened with Fran and what Fran tried to do, that they may be more inclined to hire a low-profile guy or an assistant coach at a major program now, a guy coming up the ranks, sort of what Seton Hall did with Tommy Amaker.
Mm-hmm.
Take a chance on a young, upcoming, bright coach, and go that way and work with him and maybe believe that they have a chance to mold him a little bit instead of letting him take control of the program. Obviously you have to be, have a strong personality to coach in New York City. And I think it's very important that you have a good relationship with the media and you establish some kind of rapport with the media. Fran struggled with that a little bit.
We're going to take a quick break here on Sports Talk and be back with more conversation. We want to remind you, in our weekly sports web segment, our friends at Comcast at Home have provided us with 3 great sports websites. The Comcast network on this Monday, or this Wednesday night, rather, in May. I'm getting my M's confused. It is a Wednesday night in May. I'm your host, Ken Adelberger, filling in for Bruce Beck. Quickly want to tell you that the Bulls are up 4 on the Hornets. They are at the half, 49-45 the score there. And earlier tonight, the New York Knickerbockers lost at Market Square Arena to the Indiana Pacers. 99-88 the final score there, and the Knicks lost the series in 5. The Indiana Pacers will go on to play the winner of the Bulls and the Hornets in the Eastern Conference Final. Quickly, we are off to Westfield and Pete. Pete, how are you tonight?
All right, how you doing?
Great, thank you. What's up?
Want to talk about Seton Hall basketball? Very excited for next year. It was a big blow losing Al Harrington, because if we got him, our recruiting class would have been top 5, probably in the nation. So that hurt a lot. But I was just wondering, do you know if they're going to get Glover? Because he's probably Anthony Glover, I think his name is, in New York City. He's probably the big one left.
Yes.
Right. Well, actually, apparently Seton Hall has 2 scholarships left, so he's one of the big ones. But you have to temper your enthusiasm a little bit with him, because as good as he is being the New York City Player of the Year and Seton Hall having a good shot of him, he's not going to play next year.
Mm-hmm.
He's not qualified. He won't qualify, so he will sit out next season. So you won't get him until 2 years from now, or a year from now. He'll have to sit out 1 season and won't be able to play till he's a sophomore. So that's the, even if you do get Glover, you won't reap the immediate benefits from it. So, although publicity-wise you would, and it bumps up the recruiting class significantly. And as I said, the 6'10" kid from Pensacola Junior College in Florida is also a kid Seton Hall is apparently involved in. He's supposed to be very good. Again, I spoke to 3 recruiting guys today. They really like this kid, and Seton Hall's right in there. So apparently they have 2 scholarships left, from what I understand, and intend to use them.
Lou from Summit, you're up next. Lou, what's on your mind tonight?
Hey, Kevin, Tom, how are you guys?
Very good,
Hi.
thank you. Thanks for calling. How can we help you?
No problem. I was going to ask about Anthony Glover, but your previous caller just...
Stole your thunder, huh?
Absolutely. But, Tom, I want to ask you about Mike Chappelle from Duke, and I understand that he's going to transfer and possibly go to Seton Hall, and just want to know your opinions on that, and what do you think about Seton Hall's recruiting class with the signees that they have for next year?
Okay. The only thing I can tell you, let me talk about Chappelle first, because I've just heard different things. I really haven't investigated it. I know my understanding is he is going to transfer from Duke and has made that decision and apparently informed Duke. Seton Hall immediately came into the mix because I believe, and I haven't checked with Tommy Amaker on this, but I believe Tommy Amaker recruited him to Duke and for Duke. So I believe they developed a close relationship there, and he's a pretty good player. And so I think my understanding is that he put Seton Hall very high on his list immediately, as a school he might want to go to. In terms of recruiting class, to be honest with you, I spend so much time doing college games, I very rarely see the high school kids. I can only go by what these recruiting guys, tell me, and I speak to a lot of them, and I try to stay in touch with them, and they seem to think that Seton Hall's recruiting class is good, not great, not terrible. So sort of right now in between, because I guess Damian Dawkins, they feel, is going to help immediately, and and Darius Lane is a kid who can come in and probably start right away. Although, they have a transfer from Georgia Tech sitting out, Gary Saunders, who looks like he might start right away. If you include Saunders and Ty Shine, who enrolled middle of the year as part of this recruiting class, it's a pretty good recruiting class in the sense that I think it takes Seton Hall up a little bit from where they are now. The 3 recruiting guys I spoke to said it doesn't make Seton Hall an NCAA tournament team next year. It makes them better than a 15-15 team, however.
Alan from East Windsor, you're up with Tom Luicci and Ken Adelberger. How are you tonight?
Hi, how you doing, guys?
Great, thank you.
Couple of things that have been passed on through the school itself, and also on with Mike Francesa, who was a graduate of St. John's. There's a strong possibility that they might bring Louis back for a year or 2 and hold him in reserve for Chris Mellon.
Well, does he still have something there?
Well, that would be an unusual move. I don't know why it was hard enough following Louis the first time. Why would you want to follow Louis the second time? That would...
holding him for Chris Mellon when Mellon retires.
And Chris Mullen being qualified to coach on the basis of Larry Bird. Yeah, well,
he's a little bit busy right now anyway.
Yeah,
Chris Mullen's probably got a few years left.
Chris Mullen, I don't even know, to be honest with you, I'm not belittling it, but I don't even know that Chris Mullen has ever given any indication he wants to get into coaching. So I mean, I haven't heard that yet. So maybe that's something to look into. I wouldn't dismiss it immediately. But because, as you said, the Larry Bird situation sort of changes the equation. All of a sudden, a superstar became a great coach.
Which isn't the way it's supposed to be in any sport.
Yeah, exactly. Although he became a great coach by acknowledging his weaknesses. We had a story today about how he let the assistants take over and just sort of sits back and lets the people play and run the game. So that would be interesting if Chris Mullen got involved. But, the years of covering him, I never got the impression that he wanted to coach.
Interesting. A couple callers a few minutes ago brought up the name of Al Harrington, and I know he was on the show on Monday, and much has been said, much has been written, and the jury's still very much out on this young man. I just feel that there's no way that Al Harrington comes out of high school and declares his eligibility and his desires to play in the NBA unless some agent somewhere along the line, and probably the same with Corleone Young and probably the same with Rashard Lewis, that none of these guys are going to make this jump if somebody isn't waving or dangling the carrot in front of them.
Yeah, and that's probably one of the biggest problems in college basketball right now. It's the agent situation, and that's probably what you're referring to. And the second biggest one is the sneaker situation. Both of those, factions were probably, got into his ear at some point and told him how great this was. I spoke to Jim Boeheim, the Syracuse coach, yesterday about this situation, and he gave me an interesting quote, and it was simply this: when did college all of a sudden become a bad thing? In terms of playing in the NBA. It's never been a bad thing. The 3 best rookies in the NBA this year were all four-year guys: Tim Duncan, Brevin Knight, Keith Van Horn. The majority of your great NBA players, the majority, not all, you know, you're going to point out Michael Jordan and Shaquille O'Neal, but the majority are four-year guys. And it doesn't, I tell you what, is Tim Duncan going to be hurt in his next contract because he stayed 4 years? Doesn't look to me like he's going to lose a penny. I think he's going to make more money than he ever did. And I really believe, you know, with limited viewership of Al Harrington, he needs time to develop. He's 6'8", he's a four guy, a power forward in high school who has to play the three spot in the pros, and that means adjustment. They don't take time in the NBA to teach and adjust, give you time to adjust. They just don't do it.
And you might be seeing some of that right now. Look at Kobe Bryant. Kobe Bryant is not even playing for the Lakers. He's coming off the bench. Tom Luicci has been our guest. We thank you for all your insights tonight. We'll be back with some final thoughts here on Sports Talk. Stay with us, won't you?
When they tell the story of New Jersey's coming of age over the past quarter century, invariably they point to the Meadowlands. The arrival of big-time sports here contributed a lot to New Jersey's improved identity. The man who nurtured the development of the sports complex is Bob Mulcahy of Mendham. For more than 18 years as president and CEO of the New Jersey Sports and Exposition Authority, he's been part politician, part impresario, and empire builder. The Sports Authority moved beyond the Meadowlands to Monmouth Park Racetrack, the Camden Aquarium, and the Atlantic City Convention Center. While at the Meadowlands, Mulcahy was hosting everyone from the Rolling Stones to the Pope. A few months ago, he announced his resignation, and shortly thereafter was named the new athletic director at Rutgers University. He's been in the news a lot of late, and he's our guest this week. Bob Mulcahy, thanks very much for being here.
Michael, it's always nice to come back here.
Thank you. Let me ask you why, after 18 years and your strong identification with the Meadowlands, you've decided to leave the Sports Authority.
Well, I think that it's something that I've thought a lot about. There obviously have been opportunities for me to leave in the past. And I sort of look at the complex as going through a series of changes. There was a developmental stage, and then there was a maturing stage as we obtained more franchises and established facilities. And now I think the whole business is going through a transition. And looking at opportunities around, when the opportunity for Rutgers came, it was one of those things that I felt I'd like to do. It was another challenge to participate in the life of this state and perhaps and hopefully make another contribution. And I think when it gets close to 19 years, it's time to take a change and do something else.
Well, is my sequence of events wrong? Didn't you announce your resignation first and then the Rutgers job came?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
In fact, I haven't even handed in a resignation letter yet. It's something I have to do. But I will be leaving there April 14th and starting at Rutgers on the 15th.
No vacation?
No.
Let's talk about the health of the Sports Authority. There is a sense abroad in this state that you're leaving at a time when the Sports Authority is on shakier ground than it has been.
Fondness for all four.
And now Governor Whitman was, to one degree or another, instrumental in convincing the president of Rutgers, Fran Lawrence, that you should be the next athletic director there. To what degree was she instrumental?
I can't answer that, Michael.
Confidential?
No, it's not confidential. It's just that I was not part of it. So I think I've established a very good working relationship with Dr. Lawrence. We had 2 private discussions in addition to the formal interview before the search committee, and I think he wanted to get comfortable with me, and I wanted to get comfortable with him. And I think that we have an excellent working relationship, and I would expect that it would continue. A lot of times these things get blown up a little bit in the press, and people like to think that there's a lot of influence when people make statements. Whatever discussions there might have been, I was not privy to. I went through the process. It's a challenge that, frankly, I'm looking forward to taking on, and I'm delighted that I was given the opportunity.
Well, people say or observe of you that you've been a very smart politician all your life, or that your political instincts have been good as you've been an administrator. And here you are leaving a Meadowlands where the finances are shakier than they have been before, and you're going to an athletic program where the football team was 0-10. So
0-11.
0-11, thank you. So you can only go up in your new job while your old job only goes down, is what.
Well, I don't look at my old job that way. When you start to think a little bit about, I think you have a situation where the Devils could very well win the Stanley Cup this year. I think you got two football teams that could very well be in the playoffs. I think you have a basketball team, the Nets, that have come of age, that they've put together an excellent management. They've got a good young team. I would expect that they'll be in the playoffs. We have three premier college attractions coming with Florida State and Texas A&M in the Kickoff Classic, with Kentucky and Duke in the Jimmy Valvano Basketball Classic. And we've got the Eastern Regional NCAA playoffs next year. So it's not that I'm leaving at a time when we don't have a lot of showcase things coming up there.
You didn't mention my team, the Metro Stars. Are they going to play on grass in Meadowlands?
The Metro Stars will play on grass up to August 1st.
Okay.
We've worked that out, too.
Moving to Rutgers, how do you turn this program around?
Well, I think that there are a lot of ingredients there already for the program to turn around. I think that people have to believe that the institution is serious, and I think that I've been very encouraged in my discussions with Terry Shea, the football coach. I've been very encouraged with my discussions with Kevin Bannon, with the men's basketball team, and obviously Vivian Stringer has produced the results with the women's team.
They're in the NCAA tournament this weekend.
Major game tomorrow night. There are some things there. Number one, we have to strengthen the academic support program, and I think that what do you
mean, the academic support?
The academic support program for athletes. You know, you recruit these student athletes. They put a tremendous amount of time in. Sometimes you recruit higher risk students. You then have an obligation and responsibility to make sure that they succeed. And while you want them to play their sport with passion, you also want them to go to class, you want them to get a degree. Because ultimately, Rutgers is a great institution, and I think it becomes a great recruiting tool if you can convince these young people that not only do they get a good education, but they're going to get a good job when they get out, because most of them will never play pro ball.
What do you say to those whose letters to the editor I keep reading? Rutgers will never be Penn State. Why are we throwing good money after bad? Why don't we invest the money more on the academic side and enhance this institution's already sterling reputation for research and teaching?
Well, I think that, first of all, nobody's trying to beat Penn State. What they're trying to do is be competitive in the Big East and win your share of games. But it's been clearly demonstrated around the country that success in the athletic field brings an image and a pride to an institution far out of proportion than the other accomplishments. For example, if you pick up the sports page and you can read Rutgers all over the place, you can find a professor that's made a startling discovery and it's buried in a little 2-inch story somewhere inside. What you have to do is understand that athletics is just one facet of the academic life and use the success of athletics to promote the institution as a whole.
Somebody told me that your naming as athletic director came about 4 days after the deadline at which time high school athletes had to declare their football allegiances, and the timing was bad. A week earlier, and maybe some good New Jersey high school athletes would have gone to Rutgers.
Well, there was a little story I told the day of the press conference we were named. I called Joe Paterno, who's an old friend, that morning. It was signing day. The day of the press conference was the National Signing Day. And he had already gone to a meeting, but I talked to his personal secretary, and I said to her, I said, please tell Joe that I called as a matter of courtesy to tell him I didn't want him to read it in the paper, and give him a message from me that I've just erected a high fence around the state of New Jersey. I got a note back from Joe. He took a clipping from the New York Times with a little note and said, Dear Bob, congratulations. I appreciate the call. Remember, the Berlin Wall came down in pieces. See you soon, Joe P.
Very good. Thanks very much, Bob. We wish you a lot of luck at Rutgers.
We'll
be back with another edition of On the Record next Friday night at 6:30 and Sunday morning at 11. And stay tuned now for Reporters Roundtable.
fan, chances are you're looking forward to the big Bulls and Jazz series beginning tonight, the NBA Championship Series, of course. But on the college scene, they are nearing the end of the quiet war called the recruiting season. At Rutgers, Coach Kevin Bannon is enjoying one of the school's best recruiting classes in recent history, led by 6'5" forward Dante Jones from Steinert High in Hamilton. Rutgers' 6 new recruits have been ranked as high as 11th in the country, at least by one publication.
I feel real good about it. I think, we've only just begun what I think we're going to build at Rutgers, and I think people have recognized that, and the kids have wanted to jump on board and be a part of that. So I feel good about our class. We really addressed, almost every position. We've added some depth and some good kids. Until they come and play for you, they still have to prove that they were that highly ranked, but it is nice to get a class like that.
And, of course, we talked about Dante Jones. He's one kid coming in from New Jersey. You've added a couple of junior college players as well.
Yeah, I mean, we always want to keep the good kids home, and I think we're off to a great start with Dante, one of the top players in the state and a fantastic student. So that's a good start for us, and we hope to just build on that. But, we really reached out to a lot of different areas, and what I like about the class is they're all academically eligible and then some. They're terrific students as well as being good players. So, I feel like it'll really help the stability of the program, which is so important when you're trying to build. We have 6 new players, and I'd be more than happy to go into next season with that 6 returning players and 6 new ones, but we are holding a scholarship and we're actively recruiting a few players, and if there's somebody special out there, we will add somebody this summer. If not, we'll hold it for next year, which I think is a real strong class in the metropolitan area, and that would give us 4 scholarships for next year.
Speaking of academics, we reported here that Dante Jones's favorite subject is calculus in high school. So I'd say he's academically ready.
I think so. Quite a young man. Right. Thank you, Jerry. And it was quite a night.
There's another big basketball recruit for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. I'll tell you who next.
If you have a comment, call NJN News at 1-800-JERSEY1 or our email address, njnnews@aol.com.
Well, certainly Rutgers football off and running.
That's
Woo,
right. One and counting.
Yes.
Ever so slight. And the basketball program is looking up as well. College basketball, another big recruit, has made a verbal commitment to play at Rutgers University. And he's a Jersey guy. 6'7" forward Sean Axani from Red Bank Regional High School today announced that he has chosen Rutgers. Axani led his team in rebounding last season and was 3rd in scoring, averaging 13 points a game. Axani's looking to play both small and power forward for the Scarlet Knights.
I hope, the freshman year, I hope I get some playing time and get a lot better. I'm really looking forward to working out and getting stronger and better basketball player.
I see. What do you think your weaknesses are right now?
I'd really like to expand my game, ball handling and shooting. I feel those are key aspects of my game I need to really expand.
Everybody here in the Red Bank community is happy that he's going to stay close. We can go see him play. Another one of my players verbal to St. Peter's, and so he's close. So it's real nice. Sean's a tremendously hard worker. He's been a starter. He'll be a 4-year starter before he graduates. He came in as a freshman and was an impact player. And every time I talked to a Division I coach, they always said to me, "Holy mackerel, that kid works hard."
Axani chose Rutgers over schools like Providence and the University of Penn, to name a couple. Now, some baseball nostalgia that does not involve, believe it or not, the Big East coaches today voted UConn the #1 team in the league's preseason poll. The Huskies finished last season with a 32-5 record. The Big East meeting in New York for the first time will play in one 13-team division. Syracuse was picked 2nd, followed by Miami, St. John's, and Georgetown to round out the top 5. Locally, Rutgers and Seton Hall were picked 8th and 9th, respectively, both trying to build on last year's success.
Got new coaching, a new coaching staff, and a new system, and it's been working well for us. I think we've won more games, maybe a few more games progressively, and then I think probably our biggest foothold last year, we knocked off 3 top seeded teams in the top 25 during the season. We finished up in the Big East tournament strong with first 12 seed to make it to the Big East semifinal. I think those are pretty good indicators, but again, it all comes back to hard work.
This league, as you know, is so competitive day in and day out, and anyone can beat anyone. I think you have a couple teams that seem to be head and shoulders above, but other than that, it's kind of wait-and-see attitude. And so we're anxious to see if we can be one of those teams that maybe can surprise a few people like we did last year. And that's something that our guys are working hard and trying to become a competitive team, and so establishing ourselves as a competitive program.
Both teams trying to be spoilers in this season coming up, and everybody's going to be looking at college basketball because it looks like it's going to be replacing the NBA right now.
That's right. Thank you, Jerry. Well, a mild and cool day.
In college basketball, where there is no lockout and we are closing in on the start of the season, the Big East ready to go. They held their annual media day here in town. If there is a good-looking buffet spread, our Mike Crispino is there. Mike filed this report.
The Big East starts its second decade of existence with one premier team, Connecticut, and one of the best players in the country, Richard Hamilton, who didn't take the NBA's money and run.
I think I made the best decision by coming back to school because, you know, it's an opportunity for me to get better as a basketball player and grow up as an individual. And I think I'm not ready for that NBA style yet. I think I'm ready, still trying to be a college kid and have fun.
Lately, it's been you're the hunted. You getting used to that role? Is that something you're comfortable with?
Well, I think usually what it means is that people think that you've done well in the past. You probably have some guys come in your program they think are pretty good. So that's much better than always being the guy they're worrying, you know, can he keep his job the next year? So I guess I prefer that.
This is as much a coach's league as anything else. Two new faces are adapting to new cities, schools, and some tough fans.
The folks in New York, I think they love attitude. They love, you know, effort. And I think you've got to have a team that plays with energy because the city is so full of energy. People don't walk down the street. They run down the street. So they want to see players that run down the court. They want to see players that never quit, never give up. They want to see a team, you know, not necessarily win as many games as the Yankees, but never quit in a game like the Yankees do.
I really look forward to the challenge. I think I want to be at a place that's a basketball job, and those fans they're revered in their tradition there. They love the Ernie D, Marvin Barnes, Dave Gavitt, Rick Pitino, and as recently as 2 years ago they were in the Final Eight. So there is a great tradition there, and we're just going to hope to build on it and you know, look forward to the challenge and take it head on.
Seton Hall and Rutgers try to improve on last year. Tommy Amaker brought the Pirates back to the postseason for the first time since '95. Kevin Bannon's Scarlet Knights reached a conference semifinal for the first time.
I give my kids so much credit. They went to that tournament and they just, you know, they didn't pack it in. They went and competed, and I said, let's see where it takes us. And just that little run really helped us. You know, it helped us in recruiting. It helped us with our alumni. It got us a ton more exposure and respect. And when you're trying to build a program, you need those kinds of things.
I've learned a lot about myself, and I think one of the main things that I did learn this year was that I learned how much I don't know. And that's very exciting for me because it gives me, you know, the wherewithal to feel like, you know, there's so much out there that I need to learn to get better at in terms of being more confident in myself, and that's something that I had a chance to establish this year.
We're not going to be the Big East that sends 3 teams to the Final Four, but there is no other conference that's going to do that either. Things have balanced out. There is no conference as strong as we once were, and but yet we're still pretty good, and I think that's good. We can live with that.
As the Big East celebrates its 20th anniversary, it really enters an era of parity. 7 of the last 10 champions after the Big East tournament have been different schools, and 9 of the 13 schools have gone to the NCAA tournament in the last 2 years. The hierarchy remains basically the same. Calhoun at Connecticut, Boeheim at Syracuse, Thompson at Georgetown. But people like Mike Jarvis at St. John's just might shake things up. Or it could be Tim Welsh, formerly of Iona, now with Providence College. In New York, Mike Crispino, National Finance Sports Desk.
All right, thank you, Mike. And the Huskies of Connecticut looking very strong, perhaps number 1 or 2 in the nation, all part of the Big East comeback going back to last season with 5 teams from the conference receiving NCAA bids. And the bids in for the National Finance
today. He will attend.
Chris Higman here now.
Yeah.
And, you know,
College basketball is what we're going to be talking about today, and the decision is in for one of the state's best high school basketball playing seniors, Monmouth County's Todd Billet. Where's he off to? We all know the big knock on Rutgers, if only they could keep the state's blue chip high school talent home for college. Well, for this day and this player, there is joy in New Brunswick.
I've decided last night around 11:30
that I will attend Rutgers University next year.
Todd Billet, one of the best basketball players in the state, is RU bound. Todd's been a standout guard at Christian Brothers in Lincroft for the past 3 years now. He's about to start his senior season, and then he's a Scarlet Knight.
Rutgers was there since day one. I mean, offered a scholarship sophomore year, and I don't forget of the guys that are there in the beginning. I consider myself a pretty loyal guy, and I've a loyalty to my state, and Jeff started this turnaround at Rutgers, and I just want to continue that and bring it to an even bigger level.
Yeah, nice to hear that. And a really big day in the high schools today. Soccer tonight.
News today for the Rutgers men's basketball program. One of the key players the school recruited this season announced today he will attend Rutgers. As Jerry Henry reports, now it's all in the family.
Billet for the lead. Boy, he got it all together there. For the past 4 years, Rutgers senior guard Jeff Billet has played his way into the hearts of Rutgers fans. The point guard averages about 14 points a game as he heads into his final year for the Scarlet Knights. Now, younger brother Todd, a senior at Christian Brothers Academy in Lincroft, says he will follow in big brother's footsteps at Rutgers.
It came down to I wanted to play in New Jersey. I wanted to be around this area. I think Rutgers, I mean, Coach Bannon, I love Coach Bannon, the system he has, and he's been there since day one, sophomore year. He was at my first practice. He really recruited me, and they've done a great job.
Their style is a little bit different. Todd is a little stronger at this time than Jeff was. Todd shoots the ball on the perimeter a little bit better. Jeffrey might have scored a little bit better in traffic.
Here at Christian Brothers Academy, young Billet is expected to score his 1,000th career point sometime early this season. His shooting ability is one reason why he is such a big recruit for Rutgers. The other is he was nationally recruited by some big-name programs. Todd's final choices included Clemson, Villanova, Notre Dame, and Princeton.
You know, I've always felt that Rutgers should have a shot at recruiting the best players in the state. I think we've always had the philosophy that any of our players, Rutgers should be invited in and would be allowed into the home. I'm glad the program's on the rise. Jeffrey's enjoyed his stay there.
Todd Billet joins what could be a breakthrough recruiting class for head coach Kevin Bannon. Jerry Henry, NJN News, Lincroft.
In other news from the Rutgers.
Brother Todd, well, you made a great decision there, little brother. Rutgers gets a good one, and all the details are straight ahead. Plus, the game.
Decided last night around 11:30 that I will attend Rutgers University next year.
This is a big catch for the Scarlet Knights. Hi, folks. Todd Billet, one of the best basketball players here in New Jersey. He's going to follow his brother's lead and stay close to home for college. Rutgers wins a fierce recruiting battle with Clemson, Villanova, Notre Dame, and Princeton. News 12's George Falkowski talked to the future Knight.
While everyone at Christian Brothers Academy was happy for Todd Billet today, imagine how excited they were at Rutgers. In fact, you might call it a red-letter day for the Scarlet Knights, as one of New Jersey's top college prospects decided to play at home.
I consider myself a pretty loyal guy, and I've a loyalty to my state, and Jeff started this turnaround at Rutgers, and I just want to continue that and bring it to an even bigger level.
Does it feel good to see a Jersey kid stay home?
Yeah, I guess it does. I mean, I've always felt that Rutgers should have a shot at recruiting the best players in the state. I think we've always had the philosophy that any of our players, Rutgers should be invited in and would be allowed into the home. I'm glad the program's on the rise. Jeffrey's enjoyed his stay there.
So, the Jersey boy stays home, and the Billet tradition at Rutgers will continue for the next 4 years, it seems. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves on this story, let's remember one thing. Todd Billet still goes to CBA, and he has some unfinished business right here.
Short conference and states. I mean, I can't tell you how excited. I mean, I wanted to get this decision out of the way so I can concentrate on the high school season, because I mean, I can't wait to play. I mean, I can't wait to get going. It's going to be a great year.
In Lincroft, I'm George Falkowski, News 12 New Jersey Sports.
And Todd seemed to indicate that his signing may cause a domino effect. He says he feels the next to sign on with RU Josh Moore, the 7-footer who used to play at St. Anthony's with Bob Hurley. Moore playing ball in New England this season, and Rutgers is a finalist on his list. Really a big day in the high schools. Tonight, the game of the year in soccer. And don't they
standing, so we congratulate Coach Terry Shea and Rutgers University sports season and in the years to come. Big commitment today from Todd Billet. And yes, that name is quite familiar because he's the younger brother of Jeff Billet. So there will be another Billet running the show in the backcourt. Another Christian Brothers Academy guard. He's 6 feet, and he can shoot the rock, and he can pass, and he can dribble, and he can do a lot of the things that his brother has done. That's the third verbal commitment now for Rutgers. Sean Axani from Red Bank Regional and Kareem Wright from Mercersburg Academy in Pennsylvania have already committed. We want to welcome to the phone right now Todd Billet. And Todd, first of all, sounds great. Congratulations.
Thank you, Bruce. It's a big load off my shoulders to get this done with. I'm very happy with my decision and looking forward to playing in a Rutgers uniform next year.
How much was it instrumental and influential that your older brother was a part of the Rutgers program and a big part for the last few years?
Yeah, he's played a big part in my decision by the fact that he likes to play so much, that he's had such a great career both on and off the court, and that really appealed to me and helped my decision out a lot.
Now, I know there were some other schools that you were quite interested in, Clemson, Notre Dame, Princeton, and of course your dad's alma mater, Villanova. How does he feel about it?
Yeah, he kind of kept that, he didn't hold that against me. He stayed cool in the process. No one pushed the school for me. My parents were neutral. They gave me advice, but it was all my decision.
Todd, how are you similar to Jeff, and how are you different in your style of play?
Well, I think Coach Bannon's recruiting me more. I'm going to be the point guard, so I'm going to be more with the ball, whereas Jeff this year is coming more off the screens.
With Earl being more of the point.
Exactly. So I'm coming in as a point guard to push the ball up the court and shoot off some screens on the ball and get in the lane and penetrate and do all types of things like that.
Well, you know, your brother was very media savvy. He's been a guest here on the show. He knows every team in the nation extremely well. Are you going to follow in those footsteps that we have here as a guest in the future?
Oh, yeah, we're very similar. We're both sports junkies. We love college basketball. I think it's the greatest sport. It's better than any pro sports. I know that. It's just the excitement, the college atmosphere. So we're pretty similar in that aspect.
There's certainly a lot more college basketball coming up than NBA basketball right now. Todd, congratulations, good luck, and thanks for joining us.
Okay, thank you.
So Todd Billet headed to Rutgers next season. A couple of other notes. David.
A pub that has some basketball courts, kind of unusual.
Exactly.
Well, there are some very small pubs that have little teeny-weeny bowling alleys in the back, you know, that they start to do that to expand business, so that's happened before, too. So a basketball court, wrestling, Hulk Hogan,
well, let's talk about some more basketball here at home, and certainly a big day for Rutgers. They got to be real excited.
Yeah, wasn't a lot of Rutgers fans at the pub tonight when they hear about this one. Another red-letter day for the Scarlet Knights. A third big, and we do mean big, New Jersey recruit is staying put, and he's heading to Rutgers next year. Then, of course, there he is. I'll tell you about him in a moment. We've got to sift through the rubble. Welcome back to News 12 Sports. Rutgers had one basketball scholarship left to give before today, and now it appears it's gone. And it's going to Newark's own Josh Moore, the former star at St. Anthony's, declared Rutgers his choice today, meaning the Knights have lended a bona fide 7-foot, 250-pound presence in the middle of their game plan for next year. Moore currently attends St. Thomas More Prep in Connecticut after being suspended from St. Anthony's last year for disciplinary reasons. Today, it's his 18th birthday, but it looks like Rutgers coach Kevin Bannon gets the gift. Maybe some cake, too. Josh Moore to Rutgers. Baseball news. The Mets reinstated general manager Steve Phillips today. He had stepped aside about 23 years away.
That list.
By retirement, I'll get those tickets, but no football. Here's the Scarlet Knights bagging another homegrown talent. And when we say homegrown, we mean it. 7-footer Josh Moore, former St. Anthony star, now at private school in Connecticut, announced his plans to attend Rutgers. Moore, number 33 in your picture. Left St. A's after running into disciplinary problems as a junior, now becomes the latest recruiting big fish landed by Kevin Bannon and the Scarlet Knights. To the Rothman Center now, where Fairleigh Dickinson hosts Delaware Dynamite. That's
Basketball 7-foot center Josh Moore out of St. Thomas More in Connecticut signed a letter of intent to attend Rutgers next year. Local college basketball at Alumni Hall in a
excellent recruit for the Scarlet Knights. Go right ahead.
Tony, I'll be honest with you, I don't know that much about Rutgers. I was just talking to Tim Capstraw about them. When we're not playing, I don't pay that much attention to teams outside of my realm, Atlantic 10, or they're on the schedule. And now I've watched with a little bit of interest because we will start a series with Rutgers next year, and we'll go to New Brunswick the year after that. And I know with the young Billet that they got, and they got a kid from actually my hometown of Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, named Wright. I don't know that much about him, but I know that Kevin Bannon has worked his magic everywhere that he's been, and it doesn't surprise me that Rutgers is on the rebound.
Well, the last time St. Joe's had 2 starters that were newcomers, 1990-91, they were pretty good. Rap Curry and Bernard Blood. One more segment coming up with Wide Open.
I do. And you know, just getting little glimpses here and there. Haven't seen much of it yet. Seeing Georgetown the other night playing against Temple and getting an idea of what that team is going to be like, and seeing the first several games for Seton Hall, you get a sense of a grouping. And right now, the feel would be that UConn is head and shoulders above the rest of that grouping. But as you know, as the Big East is going to shake down, St. John's big win tonight for Mike Jarvis in his debut. We'll see what they can do against UMass coming up in their next game in the preseason NIT. That's going to be an interesting league to watch once you get past number 1.
Rutgers and Seton Hall, 2 young coaches, 2 guys who last year did a marvelous job in their first year. Kevin Bannon continues to recruit well, and Tommy Amaker, pretty much the same thing. What do you look for from those 2 schools?
I think you're talking about a step forward again. I think that Kevin has and you know this better than anybody, you're around the program a lot. Kevin has a very good feel for where he wants that program to go. And Tommy has taken the Seton Hall program and taken a good look at what it was going to be, what kind of a hand was dealt to him, and now he's trying to jump it up to that next level. And we're seeing, you know, those bits and pieces. He's got some talent there. He's hurting a little bit in the front court this year, but it's a building process, and I'll tell you something, he's certainly got the energy to do it.
Scott's got Amaker. I've got Bannon throughout the season with our college basketball shows. Right now, closer look at other things to look for this year in the Big East.
Here he is. 2 seconds.
The Big East Basketball Conference should see its share of upsets and surprises in the 98-99 season, just as it does each and every year. But one of the things that most of the experts can agree upon is that no one should be surprised at the kind of success that UConn might have this season. The Huskies are very talented and considered to be one of the best teams in the nation.
They have 2 Player of the Year candidates, at least in the Big East, in Elamine and Richard Hamilton. And I think the expectations are this year that if they don't make the first Final Four in school history, it'll be a disappointing season.
This team has a chance to, I think, be a very good basketball team. I think we got to do 3 things. I think we need to be healthy, and we've already gone through the experience of having Richard break his foot. Secondly, we got to be hungry. Last year's team was very hungry. It was very hungry. And third, I think there's no question that we need to be more diversified.
The Orangemen of Syracuse finished 26-9 a year ago and made yet another trip to the Sweet 16. Jim Boeheim will need some of his younger players to step up if the Orangemen are going to have similar success this season.
Overall, the season was very good. Our 3 sophomores got a lot of great experience, and now as juniors, we hope that tournament experience last year will help them this year.
A couple of new, old familiar faces enter the Big East Conference as head coaches this season. Mike Jarvis, who spent the last 8 seasons at GW, takes over the reins at St. John's, and Tim Welsh, who led the Iona Gals to the NCAA tournament a year ago, is the new head man at Providence.
Well, it'll be a challenge, that's for sure, because obviously the Big East is a tremendous basketball conference. There's tremendous players and tremendous coaches.
It's great to come into a place with as much history and tradition and so many great former coaches like Lou Conaseca and Lapchak and so many former great players. It's really exciting.
The New Jersey faction of the Big East Conference is led by 2 young and very talented head coaches, both of whom are in their 2nd season.
It's a tough road the first time around. You learn a lot, and but I feel great, and I feel even more confident that what we're doing is the right thing. We're on the right path. We're moving along probably faster than we ever imagined.
First thing I learned is that I learned how much I don't know, and that's exciting for me because there's so much to get better at, so much to improve on, and I'm hoping to be able to do that for the sake of our team and our program.
Al Skinner is also in his second season as a head coach in the Big East Conference. He hopes to improve upon a 15-16 mark from a year ago. Meanwhile, the Miami Hurricanes return 11 players from a year ago, led by all Big East first-team pick Tim James. The Canes went 18-10 last season and went to the NCAA tournament for only the second time in school history.
Our expectations are definitely high. We got a solid nucleus coming back. We only lost Kevin Norris. We definitely want to get back to the tournament this year.
The Pittsburgh Panthers went 11-16 a year ago. They returned all 5 starters to try and improve on that mark. Notre Dame will have to find a way to replace first-round NBA draft pick Pat Garrity. Garrity averaged over 23 points and 8 rebounds a game a year ago. And Steve Lappas and the Villanova Wildcats look to bounce back from a disappointing 12-17 finish a year ago. Lappas has his 6 top players returning, including senior guard John Celestin.
Last year, by taking our lumps, the senior class, we know how it is to win and lose. So now we've taken the bitter with the sweet, and it's time to move on and do some better things.
Defense and up-tempo style of play will once again be the trademark of John Thompson's Hoyas. The Hoyas have 10 players returning from a team that went 16-15 a year ago. And Gail Catlett's West Virginia Mountaineers, who were the surprise of last year's NCAA tournament, making it to the Sweet 16 as a number 10 seed, will have to find a way to replace all 5 starters.
I think it's going to be more of a rebuilding year. We got a whole lot of new recruits in. Good recruits, though. We're going to look to press a lot. We got a lot of quick, athletic guys coming in, so hopefully if everything go all right, we'll be all right.
Quick and athletic, Scott Graham, we heard that a lot during those interviews.
Which means that you're generally setting yourself up for some exciting games. And as we said, the level of competition, there are some teams with some strength back, but the level of competition looks like it's going to be a lot of fun.
We'll see you in a little while.
I'll be back.
All right, we'll take a short break. We've got more guests coming up. Our focus next is the MAC Conference.
Back on Sports Talk for a Wednesday night. Scott Graham sitting in for Bruce Beck here this evening. And as we said, we got kind of a mixed bag this evening. We're going to be talking some college football, also a little bit about the New York Giants and the change they've made at the quarterback spot. We're also talking about the world of college basketball tonight. I mentioned the fact that another big recruit landed by the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. And with 4 recruits that they have brought in, a lot of people are saying that this may be a top 10 recruiting class. I'm not just talking about locally or regionally, I'm talking about nationally. Guy responsible for that, the head coach of the team, Kevin Bannon, joins us on the phone line right now. How you doing, Coach?
Hey, how's it going, Scott?
Doing okay, thanks. We appreciate you stopping by with us here, and I guess congratulations are in order.
Well, thank you. I mean, I feel good about the class we brought in, and certainly time will tell where this class ranks, but we do feel quite optimistic about it.
Well, when you get an opportunity to bring in a big guy like Josh Moore, and of course there's a lot of people around the country that were, anybody is looking for the opportunity to bring in a 7-footer with his kind of skills. He obviously has shown a lot in the past. There's a lot of people that were after him. How good were you feeling about this, in the days leading up to it?
Oh, well, you never feel good until they sign on the dotted line. I mean, Josh was a highly sought-after player, but we felt that as time moved along, he seemed more and more comfortable about staying around home for a lot of reasons, and we just hung in there. It was a process that's taken place really since I got the job at Rutgers, and it was good to see it come to fruition.
One of the things that people were talking about specifically in regard to this, in light of this, as we move on to today and for the coming weeks, is the fact that it seems that a lot of local kids are beginning to look home and beginning to look at Rutgers as a viable option in staying home. You mentioned that a couple of moments ago. Is that part of what you were trying to bring out to them when you pitch recruits?
Sure. I mean, we feel as a state university we have an awful lot to offer, and it's just good that some of these players early on in my career at Rutgers are saying that they have enough faith in the program and what's going on in the program, and certainly they want to play in the Big East Conference, so it's nice. I mean, I said all along since I got the job, we just need to get better as a program, obviously, and we need to improve our talent level, but if we can do that and do that with New Jersey players, then I think it becomes really special for a lot of reasons.
How much, Kevin, is incumbent upon you guys in terms of the way you perform and the fact that you came in last year, led the team to a specifically very exciting ending of the season? That certainly pins it up in the media's minds and fans' minds and in recruits' minds as well. How important was it for you to get that fast start last year?
Oh, it was very important because people want to see progress, and we we took some nice steps towards where we want to be, and I think people respect that. And when they see you moving in the right direction, and an awful lot of things are happening at Rutgers that there's reason to be excited about. And the families and the players see these things going on, and the kind of attendance that we have, the enthusiasm, and a lot of the new things that are happening under Bob Mulcahy as athletic director. I think they feel that the time is right to jump on board, and certainly we feel great about that because it can only get better.
Talking to Kevin Bannon here this evening on Sports Talk about the recruiting class for the coming year, but also in terms of having local players stay at home, players of impact. A lot of people liked Dante Jones last year out of Steinert High School, and you guys landed him. What are you seeing down the road for Dante?
Oh, well, there's definitely huge things down the road for Dante. Right now we're trying to speed up progress, throw him to the fire a little bit. I mean, the sky's the limit for this guy. He's going to be a big-time star in our league, and certainly somebody that all the Rutgers fans are going to love. But right now, he's like our sixth man. We bring him in off the bench, which I think is very good for Dante. And each and every moment he's out on the floor, you see more and more of his tremendous talent.
How about you guys this year in terms of what you're looking for? There's a lot of people that have said you're talking about a team up on top in UConn, in the Big East, and then everybody else, in a lot of respects, with a fair shot at knocking one another off. Is that something that could play very much into your hands?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, we really feel that there's an awful lot of teams that are, in a position to hopefully take some giant steps forward, and we think we're one of those teams. I mean, it's a wide open league. I certainly think there's some teams right now that are underrated. The Miamis of the world, the St. John's, and the Syracuse are guys that I think are legitimate top 15, top 20 programs that right now are not ranked there. But I think once you get past that group, this is a wide open league, much the way it was last year. And we want to be a team that can play more consistently, play better on the road, and see if we can't move up the ladder a bit.
All right, well, Kevin, once again, congratulations on landing Josh Moore on a fine recruiting class. Good luck in the coming season, and I'm sure we'll bump into you somewhere along the way.
Thanks a lot, Scott.
As Kevin Bannon, the head coach of the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, joining us here on the telephone line. There are some people that are saying when this early signing period ends, this could be a top 10 class nationally in terms of recruits that have been brought in. Talking about players that are in the top 50 overall. They are all four of them, as a matter of fact, headed to the Rutgers Scarlet Knights for next season. And this is a team that ended with a little bit of a bang last year. They're hoping to continue that progress forward this year. It's good news for Kevin Bannon and Rutgers fans. We take your telephone calls.
League football games. I thought you did a great job.
Thanks, Sports Weekly, and it's a pleasure once again to welcome the athletic director on the banks of the old Raritan, Bob Mulcahy. Ready to talk some hoops?
Hey, Bruce, I'm ready to talk hoops right away.
When you talk about Rutgers men's program, Kevin Bannon's got this team flying. Do you think last year will serve as a springboard for this year?
Last year has to serve as a springboard for this year for no other reason than it gives them some confidence that they can compete against the best. We beat 3 ranked teams, and with the recruits that we have in, the excitement is there. We've got a new atmosphere in the athletic center with some of the improvements we've made, and I think it's a year with great expectations.
What about the job that Kevin has done for next year, bringing in 3 New Jersey recruits and 2 top 50 recruits?
Well, I think it does 2 things. It sends a message about where this program is going, and secondly, it sends a message to New Jersey athletes that here we are, the State University Rutgers. We're waiting for you. You can come here, you can make a name, you can be an All-American here in your home state with your family watching you.
Do you think to judge a coach, you have to give a coach 3-4 years to bring in his own talent?
Without question. That's the only fair way to deal with it, Bruce. And there are a lot of other things that go in the evaluation. But one of the big ones is obviously your ability to recruit. And he's shown he can do that. And not only that, the subsequent year we have 4 additional slots open.
C. Vivian Stringer turned things around 1 year ago, 22-10 for the Scarlet Knights women program. And do you think this program is back on the up?
There's no question. Not only is it back on the up, I think it's on a very high plane. I expect this year to be better than last. I think the record will be better, although we play a much tougher schedule. We have non-conference games with Tennessee at the Garden, which is a big deal on January 3rd. We're playing Texas at Texas. We're playing Ohio State. We tried to upgrade the schedule so that when it came time to seed the tournament, the team for the tournament, we'd be in a position to really show the country that we're there.
And this is an interesting blend of newcomers with some experience, so it's a nice combination.
She had 2 great freshman recruits that are on the team, and she's got 2 additional recruits for next year. And you're right, there is a blend class to class there for her team.
How do you look at the RAC as a home facility for both men's and women's basketball?
Well, it's always been ranked as one of the toughest places to come into, and we've tried to do other things to make it even tougher. I think the presence of Rutgers is much more evident in the facility, and the turnout that we've had initially only bodes that well for sellouts this year. And once you have sellouts and people can't get in, then you got them wanting to get in, and that's what I want.
Is there a window of opportunity here because the NBA lockout? Can college basketball really rise to the fore?
I think if college basketball misses the opportunity, they're very foolish. And I think people can understand that they can come here for the price of taking a family of four to an NBA game. They can buy a season ticket to Rutgers. It's that simple.
You know, I sense your energy. Are these exciting times for basketball fans on the banks of the Raritan?
This is a very exciting year for basketball fans on the banks of the El Raritan, and I'm excited for them because they've waited a long time, and hopefully we can produce for them this year the beginning of a long tradition.
All right, let's throw the ball up. Thanks for joining us. That's it for this edition of Rutgers Sports Weekly. I'm Bruce Beck. Thanks for joining us, everyone, and we'll see you next time.
For the health of Rutgers basketball coach Kevin Bannon. He had to miss the team's game against Wichita State during the just completed tournament in Hawaii the other night, reportedly suffering from an unspecified stomach ailment. Bannon was scheduled to undergo more tests today. A Rutgers spokesman said there is no cause for alarm at this time and that if Bannon is feeling better, he should be back at practice with the Scarlet Knights as early as tomorrow. To high school football now, and if you've been following
position. In college basketball, the Rutgers men tip off the Big East schedule tomorrow against Georgetown. Now, RU is 5-1, but the level of competition in the Big East, a far cry from the likes of the Knights' opponents thus far this season.
Well, we feel good about the way we've played to date. The guys have done everything they needed to do. But we also understand that the Big East is a whole nother mountain to climb. And, you know, we're going to have to take our game up a notch, starting with Georgetown.
And before we go, Rutgers men down in D.C. tonight to start their conference play with Big East rival Georgetown. News 12's Dave Grunebaum with a look at the Knights.
The Scarlet Knights hope their Big East opener turns out to be a jam. With wins over Wagner, James Madison, Wichita State, Columbia, and FDU, Rutgers rides a 5-1 record into tonight's game with Georgetown.
Everybody's excited. We got off to a good start this year, and we just want to go out and show the Big East that we're back this year. We're a force to be reckoned with.
I think it's going to be a real physical, get after each other type of game, and hope we're ready to survive one of those wars.
One thing both teams have in common, youth. 4 of Georgetown's starters are either freshmen or sophomores, while Rutgers starts 2 freshmen.
We have a number of new guys who really haven't experienced Big East, just the intensity and the competition that it kind of comes with being in the Big East and playing other teams in the Big East. There's something there that just kind of takes things a little bit higher.
Hey, we're throwing them to the wolves, but you got to do it. Just like Georgetown's throwing their freshmen to the wolves, so are we, and you see what happens.
One big bright spot for the Scarlet Knights, 265-pound freshman Rashad Kent, who's among the nation's leaders with an 84.6 field goal percentage.
Rashad's doing an outstanding job. He's just such a big presence underneath, and it's hard to move. He gets positioned in there, and it's tough to deal with.
Defensively, Rutgers has played pretty well. I mean, only 2 teams have scored more than 60 points on them. But when it comes to rebounding, well, that's a different story.
It's the number one thing that scares the heck out of me going down to Georgetown. As a team, we've got to rebound better if we want to have any success in our league.
So far, Rutgers' season's been a success, but they'll only go as far as their rebounding lets them. In Piscataway, Dave Grunebaum, News 12 New Jersey.
Hope you like college basketball because...
Jerry, how about...
Here yesterday in an exhibition.
College basketball tonight and the Big East opener for the Rutgers Scarlet Knights, who came into this game with a record of 5-1, taking on the Georgetown Hoyas, who were 6-2 at the MCI Center. Beautiful night in the nation's capital. Kevin Bannon's club, though, came to play. Jeff Billet with the 3-point bucket to give the Scarlet Knights a 21-15 lead. Later in the first, Jeff Greer to Rashad Kent down low. Kent with the slam. Rutgers at the half led 35-30, and John Thompson was not pleased. Second half, Rod Hodgson with the fake goes inside for the slam. Scarlet Knights 41-36. But Georgetown makes a run. Freshman Anthony Perry with the steal, and the young man from St. Anthony's goes all the way. It's 54-51. Now 25 seconds left. Rutgers up 4, but Perry loses the ball to Rob Hodgson. Hodgson goes to the line, makes both free throws. Rutgers takes a 68-62 lead, and they win it. So the Scarlet Knights are cruising 6-1 now on the season. They win their Big East opener. Old Dominion beating St.
Coming in at 6-2. Rob Hodgson here for Rutgers goes for the baseline. Pretty move, and Rutgers had the early lead. They're up by 5. Second half, G-Town trailing by 5. Anthony Perry with the steal. Anthony Perry with the lay-in. Georgetown down 56-49. Rutgers up 4. Earl Johnson takes it and fires the jumper, and that basically iced it as Rutgers goes on to win by the final score of 68-62. So they're now 6-1 overall and 1-0 in the conference. Georgetown drops to 6-3. Hodgson and Rashad Kent led the way with 17 points apiece. Boston College in Miami.
Senior forward Rob Hodgson driving strong to the basket for the Jam. 15 of the 17 came in the second half. And Georgetown sophomore guard Anthony Perry single-handedly kept them in the game. Off the steal and the layup, part of a 9-0 run by Perry alone. But Rutgers held on late. Junior guard Earl Johnson with the pull-up. He hits and holds off the Hoyas. Rutgers now 6-1 overall. Meanwhile, a new
hoops from the Big East.
They haven't had many in this first half. And Johnson about.
This is David. The college basketball season picked up steam tonight with action in the Big East. Rutgers at Georgetown, Hoyas in their home whites. Check out Earl Johnson of the Bronx, a member of Phi Slamma Jamma. Rutgers by 5 at halftime. And in the second half, Johnson again finds Rashad Kent underneath for the bucket and the foul. Rutgers over Georgetown, 82-68. To Louisville and number 5.
College hoop court. The Big East opener for Georgetown hosting the Rutgers Scarlet Knights. First half, Rutgers, Dante Jones. The rebound and the outlet pass all the way down to Jeff Billet for the hoop and 2. The undersized Knights beat the Hoyas 68-62 in the Big East opener for both. Good job there for Rutgers.
And one of the best. We're just left with college hoops. And around here, hey, that's just fine. The Georgetown kids went nuts because their team got shelled. Rod Hodgson of Rutgers with the Jam. Scarlet Knights win it 68-62. The border battle between 5th-ranked Kentucky and number 11 Indiana going on.
Well, Rutgers visiting Georgetown's the first Big East game this season for both teams. Rutgers in red. Huge game for 285-pound freshman Rashad Kent. Rutgers by 5 at the half. Kent finished with 17. Senior Rob Hodgson also at 17. The surprising Scarlet Knights are 6-1. Coach Kevin Bannon wins his first Big East road game, 68-62, the final. Hofstra.
Basketball and men, how things have changed in the Big East. Rutgers over once powerful Georgetown, 68-62. Second half, Rutgers up 3. Rob Hodgson, great head fake, then in for 2 of his 17 with authority. Later in the half, Earl Johnson. This is what we call sweet penetration. Draws the defense towards him and then dishes off to Rashad Kent. The head fake in the bucket, and Rutgers wins by 6. Also tonight, Hofstra.
Alternative college hoops. Big East college hoops from our nation's capital. It's Rutgers versus Georgetown. Rashad, don't call me Clark Kent. Turned the bad guy away, took a fall, but it's hard to keep a Superman down. Get it? Kent from Earl Johnson. He's missed just 1 shot in 4 games all season. Scored 17. Rutgers runs Georgetown right off the court, 66-62.
And Indiana ball got their Big East campaign underway as well, and they found out the answer to the question, just what the heck is a Hoya anyway? Hockey, hoops, even some football coming at you right after this.
Big basket for Johnson. He matches his C6.
For Rutgers in the Big East, the conference opener on the road against Georgetown. Knights looking for big things this season, and this will be a good test against the Hoyas tonight. Rob Hodgson sporting the Marine Aviator look, and you know what? Not a bad idea to be a Marine if you're playing the Big East. It is physical. Rashad Kent with the swat and then the knot on his head. He'd be okay, though. Knights played a strong first half. Looked like thoroughbreds. Earl Johnson gliding home. And then Jeff Billet breaking from the pack, strong to the hole as the physical play continued. And check out Jeff Greer. Sweet bounce pass to Kent. That is a big finish. RU led by 5 at the half. Hoyas made it interesting, though. Watch Kevin Braswell cross over and the launch over Billet. Count it. Not enough, though. RU with their first road win in the Big East under Kevin Bannon. 68-62, the final. And the
Come on the program, it's Q&A time for Mike Tyson with one requirement: no questions regarding any pending litigation. Also on tonight's menu, K-State let a major bowl slip away. We'll finally hear what their coach has to say about that disappointment. More college hoops, Rutgers and Georgetown, and Kansas and Iowa. We'll have that upset next. Against the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, Jeff Greer, Rashard Kent. Rutgers led by 5 at halftime. Second half, Earl Johnson looking for Kent.
Here's Johnson dancing down.
Double pump, got the hoop, got the foul. Rutgers a 12-point lead. Kent 7 of 8 from the floor. Georgetown coming back though. Anthony Perry pushing. Rutgers lead 54-46. More Perry. Perry picks off Greer's pass. Did the dirty work, gets to take it the distance. Georgetown down by 4. Perry had 16. Rutgers stays cool. Johnson looking to rattle in the jumper, seals the victory. Johnson had 13, and Rutgers had a victory by the final of 68-62. Rutgers won the battle on the boards, 43-28. Kevin Bannon, Rutgers coach, is now 3-0 lifetime against John Thompson.
A lot of hoops tonight. Rutgers, they looked good last night, didn't they? And tonight in Jersey, and tried to sink Rutgers. Jersey City's Anthony Perry. He now plays for Georgetown. And I mean to tell you, Rutgers looked great last night. Storming in front, doing it on the road no less. There's Rashard Kent. He's leading the nation in field goal percentage, over 85% now. But I tell you, Perry single-handedly kept the Hoyas in this game, just like he used to do for Bob Hurley at St. Anthony's. This is tight down the stretch, but here's the big one. Earl Johnson, under 3 minutes to go, big bucket right here. Rutgers gets their first Big East road win in 2 years. How about that, Kevin Bannon? They won it by 6. Well, New Jersey...
The season is underway, but we're just starting. Hello again, everyone. I'm Bruce Beck. Welcome to the Kevin Bannon Show. And over the next 3 months, we'll cover Rutgers basketball from A to Z. We'll have highlights, scouting reports, features, and much more. We'll take you from the banks of the old Raritan to the Big East to the Big Dance. And on that note, let me welcome back the coach, Kevin Bannon, and it's good to be back with you.
It's great to be back with you, Bruce. Hopefully lots of fun with the show and lots of W's to talk about.
Well, the Scarlet Knights are off to a good start, 6-1 overall, 1-0 in conference play, but you haven't been able to stomach the team's success.
Very, very good, very good. I've had a little bit of problem with my stomach. It's been a reoccurring situation. Now it's been maybe 7-8 days where it hasn't come back, so I feel very good, and let's hope it doesn't come back again.
You actually missed the Wichita State game, right?
Yeah, that's never happened to me before, but I was in such a weak condition, being away in Hawaii and away from the doctor. We didn't get the medicine in me in time, and I was pretty wiped out. But Todd Kowalczyk stepped in and did a great job.
An early present for the coach, a pack of antacids. Good luck.
Well, thanks. I've had a few remedies given to me. Now you give me yours. Well, thanks a lot. I'm sure I'll at least make it through the show.
All right, let's talk about the Scarlet Knights, who last year, 14-15 in Kevin's first full campaign. They went to the semifinals of the Big East, and a lot of returnees, including Jeff Billet.
Well, it all starts with Jeff. He's our most experienced player. He's made a lot of big shots, none bigger than that one, in a Rutgers uniform. And you know, he's just off to a great start, which shouldn't surprise anybody. He's a great three-point shooter. He can run the team from the point. He always guards the best offensive player on the other team, and he's just a great leader for us.
Junior Earl Johnson with over 700 career points already.
Well, he's a key player for us this year. Earl, the way he can break down the defense, he can shoot a deep three, terrific in transition. He needs a little bit more consistency, and if he turns it up a notch, it's really going to bode well for our squad this year.
From the Bronx, sophomore Jeff Greer, the first ever Bannon recruit.
Yeah, Jeff might be our most improved player. He's grown a little bit, he's gotten stronger, and he's Mr. Versatility for us. He could step out and hit a deep three, and here you see how quick he is and how how well he finishes in transition.
Rob Hodgson is off to a great start, averaging 15 per ball game.
Well, he's our other co-captain, and what can you say? He's our forward version of Jeff Billet. He can step out, hit the three. He goes down low and bangs with the big guys. Right now he's shooting over 65% from three. Just seems to make the big plays at the right time.
6'11" junior from Lithuania, Alvydas Tenys.
Well, he's a key guy for us if we can get Alvydas to take it up a notch. He's got the potential. He's never quite gotten that comfort level on the court, but if that comes, it's going to really mean a few more W's for our team.
A lot of veterans, but a good recruiting class as well.
Well, that's what I like about this team. I think we have a nice combination of some veterans coming back at key positions, but I'm very, very excited about the young kids.
And a lot of those newcomers are seeing a lot of action early on. Their development paramount to Rutgers' success this year. Rashad Kent, 6'6" freshman, a mountain masquerading as a man.
Well, to date, he's been our biggest impact player. He is a guy that's only about 6'6½", but he plays about 7'2½". He's wide, he's strong, and I think the best thing about Rashad is his feel for the game. He has a rare ability to get that ball up in the basket.
Joel Salvi, a junior from Allegheny JUCO.
This guy's coming on strong. He is very athletic, very tough. He's a guy that can defend, he can rebound, he can score inside. I love his game, and I call him the Dennis Rodman of Rutgers basketball.
He's fiery, isn't he? Dante Jones, the much heralded freshman from New Jersey, Steinert High School.
Well, nobody should be surprised that Dante's off to a nice start for us. A couple of double-figure games. Another versatile guy. He can play well in transition, can step out, hit the three, and is probably the best athlete in the program.
Mr. Basketball in New Hampshire, Billy Collins.
Well, this guy, people have only seen bits and pieces of what he's going to do for us, but he's going to be a great player in a Rutgers uniform. 6'7", can run, can jump, can hit a three, can finish at the rim, and people are going to see a lot more of Billy in the near future.
1,910 career points in the high school ranks for Billy Collins. Unfortunately, Eugene Dabney, torn ACL, medical redshirt.
Yeah, he just had surgery this morning, was coming on like gangbusters, really was playing good basketball for us, but we're going to make it into a positive. He'll be back next year as a freshman.
Junior Brian Samuels from Simon Gratz High School in Philadelphia.
Just a solid, tough point guard, can give us good minutes, defend, distribute the ball, and he'll get out on the court more than people have seen.
And walk-on Connor Fox, the son of a coach.
Yeah, a good friend of mine, Tom Fox, great coach in the state of New Jersey at Pope John and formerly at Union. His son Connor's our walk-on this year and brings a lot to the table. Great kid, and it's a pleasure to have him in the program.
Well, one thing that worked often last year on this program was why it worked, as Coach Bannon becomes Professor Bannon and breaks down a specific Rutgers play or attack. And today, once again, it's brought to you by the Rutgers Court Club. Let's talk motion offense.
Well, it's a big part of our arsenal because we feel we have 4 good perimeter players out at the court every time. And right here you have a situation where a number of people touch the ball, we get some good movement, and it ends up with a penetration and a dish. But it doesn't happen by accident. It starts here with Earl doing a little ball reversal. We get the ball swung. We have a little bit of screening where we get Jeff Greer coming off a double screen. But he reads his defensive man and goes backdoor. And then Earl makes another read off that and comes off of Rob Hodgson and gets his penetration, and that's where he dishes to Rob for the layup.
Good movement throughout here. That's got to be a key.
Well, when you have 4 good perimeter players, you want to have good spacing where people can put the ball on the floor or do what they like to do. So right there, the screening per se didn't give us this opportunity, but it gave us spacing for Earl to penetrate. And Rob did a phenomenal job, as he always does, of just seeing where he can go with the spacing, and he gets a layup at it.
Coach, it worked. Congratulations.
Thank goodness.
Hopefully we'll see a lot more as the season goes on. Why it worked, brought to you by the Rutgers Court Club. Well, a lot has worked for Rutgers thus far this season. When we come back, we'll find out about the early season, and we'll look ahead to the Providence Friars. Stay with us. Start for the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, and shooting it extremely well from the field. Coach, 44% from downtown and 49% from the field overall. That's an outstanding plus.
Well, I feel good about that. I think it's a real strength with our team. I think we have good perimeter, three-point shooting, and just good shot selection overall. So, you know, if we should shoot the ball well. I mean, with our personnel. And then inside, Rashad Kent is all or nothing. He's a dunk layup guy, or he doesn't shoot the ball at all. So we should have a high shooting percentage.
A lot has transpired already. Let's get you caught up on the Rutgers season, beginning with the opener November 14th. Are we really starting that early, Coach?
I think that's the earliest I can ever remember playing a basketball game. The guys were ready. We ran well. Wagner came in, was really feisty, really got after us defensively. But when our defense got going, our transition got going, and there you see some real nice plays. Jeff Greer off the dribble, and prior to that, Jeff Billet finding Earl Johnson. Right here we get the big fellow involved, Rashad Kent, who does it so well, always under control around the basket.
And he did it in both ends, comes up with a couple of blocks.
Yeah, he's active. I think people that don't know Rashad or haven't seen him are going to be amazed at his athleticism and his timing for a guy that has 280 pounds on him.
Greer was 7 for 7 from the field, had 22 points in this ball game, and really was a plus.
Yeah, well, that's his versatility. He rebounds for a guard, he shoots the three, and yet he's so good in the open court.
Billet, 15 points, 4 for 4 from downtown. Rutgers wins at 72-55. On to James Madison in Harrisonburg, Virginia. This was a quality win.
I really think so. I mean, this is a team that I think could be a tournament team. They have 5 Jersey players. They have a lot of veteran kids. We went down into their territory, and boy, we just started well with our defense, and we set the tone right off the bat, and we never looked back. Good overall team performance.
There's Dante Jones, who had 6 for 10, 13 points in the ball game. Here's a little bit of flash from Jeff Greer. 22 minutes for Jones, so he got a little bit into the fire here.
Yeah, when you get the ball out to Earl Johnson and Jeff Billet, and you have people like Jeff Greer and Dante Jones flying down the sideline, you can really get some nice transition there.
Billy Collins, 8.7 minutes. Rutgers wins it 78-56. Now Columbia, December 3rd at the rack, and Kent was something, 6 for 6 from the field.
Well, we wanted to get him involved early. Obviously, they don't have the kind of personnel to match up with Rashad, and that gave us that inside-outside look. If you get some easy baskets around the basket, you're going to get some open looks for people like Hodgson and so forth.
Nice look there by Earl.
Yeah, Earl does a great job of getting by his man, drawing the defense, and then finding the big fella on the block.
Joel Salvi, man, this guy's got energy. He had 14 points in 17 minutes.
He's really become a crowd favorite because people at the rack love people that, you know, let it all hang out, and boy, does Joel let it all hang out.
And here's Billet hitting some three-point field goals. He had 16. Rutgers up at the half and winning easily in this ball game, 84-49. So the Scarlet Knights looking good at home. Now let's go to Tuesday night's ball game at the MCI Center against Georgetown. You open up the Big East slate on the road, and the team really produced.
Well, we sure did. I mean, we went down there and we got just what we expected. We played a tough Georgetown team that really can defend and really gets after you. And it was a war. It was like a mid-year war, and our guys responded very favorably.
Kevin, you killed them on the boards, 43-28. You don't see that against Georgetown teams.
No, that was big. I mean, the days prior to that game, I said, guys, we have to step up. This is the Big East. We've been out-rebounded in a number of our non-league games, and if we don't, as a group, come together, it's going to be a long year. And we got tons of rebounds from the guard spots, and everybody stepped up.
Kent had 17 in 36 minutes. Hodgson will come up with the big steal here, I think, to ice the game.
Yeah, that was huge right there. I think they had cut the lead. Yeah, they had cut it to 4, and we got a hand on the ball, and Rob came up with it and iced the victory.
So here's a look at the results. Rutgers did go out to Hawaii. We'll talk more about that later. That was the split with Auburn and Wichita State. And after Wichita State, we saw highlights of the Columbia ball game, the win over FDU at home, and then the big W at Georgetown, which is the way you want to start the Big East. And you get the road victory, which I think can help the team's confidence as the season unwinds.
Well, there's no question that we wanted to make sure we got off to a good start in the league. We got that first win under our belt, but as you say, it was a road win, a quality road win, and I think our guys feel good about themselves. We needed to get that monkey off our back early.
Won't be any more articles for a while, right?
Well, you know, hey, we earned it. We were 0-9 on the road last year. We earned it. We earned the criticism, and it's just good to see that 70% of this team wasn't even here last year. It's a new year, and there's a whole different feeling on this team, and they're off to a great start.
All right, let's go on to the upcoming game against the Providence Friars. New coach, Tim Welsh, who left Iona. That ball game is Friday, 7 o'clock at the rack. Timmy Welsh, an outstanding young guy, and I know that you have a lot of respect for him.
Oh, I certainly do. I think he was a great selection for them. His style is perfect for the personnel that was left over at Providence. They're going to really get after you, full court press, try to make the game into an up and down game. And I'd say they're one of the surprises in the league this early on.
This guy, Jamel Thomas, averaging 25.4 to lead the Big East in scoring, and he can do it a lot of different ways. Here's Aaron Maxey, the sophomore, who can really jump.
Yeah, he's a guy that plays bigger than his 6'6", 6'7" that he is. Gets a lot done around the basket, very active player.
They will miss this guy, Kendrick Moore, stress fracture left foot, not expected back until later in the month. The transfer from Mizzou, a graduate student, so that's a big loss for them.
It really is, because he as you see, he can bomb from downtown, but he can also do some nice things in transition.
And there's the kid from Archbishop Stepinac in New York, Llewellyn Cole. Add him to the mix, including Sean Connolly and Justin Farley. So they've got some different weapons, and you always expect pressure and tempo from Providence.
Definitely. I think Tim's style is to get his kids to be really aggressive, to give you different looks, try to make the game a little chaotic and try to run off of that chaos. And they're playing with an awful lot of confidence right now. I'm glad they're coming to the rack early in the year. Our kids have a lot of confidence playing there, so it should be a great Big East game.
Can you quickly take me through the keys to this ball game?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the first thing we have to do is we have to handle their full court pressure. They give you a lot of different looks, and they have a lot of confidence with it. The next thing, we have to do a good job defensively on the glass with everybody we play, because we're not the most overpowering team, so keep them off the offensive glass. And then Jamel Thomas might be the best pro prospect or best offensive player in the Big East, and there's a lot of them, so that tells you how I feel about Jamel Thomas. We've got to keep him under control. He can get 20 like most players can get 5 or 6 points. He's that good, and we have to get him under control.
Coming up next, we'll give the ball to Earl. Earl Johnson joins us in the studio when we return to the Kevin Bannon Show. Stay with us. The Kevin Bannon Show continues. Welcome back, everyone. It's a pleasure to welcome one of the standout guards for the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers, now in his 3rd season, Earl Johnson out of Port Chester, New York. How you doing, Earl?
How you doing? Thanks for having me on the show.
It's a pleasure to have you as well. And Earl, you've been in both roles, starting and coming off the bench. Right now, you're coming off the bench, a little bit different for you. How are you adjusting?
Well, I mean, I'm adjusting pretty well. I mean, my mindset is a little different now as far as coming off the bench, and I think you could look at it negatively or positively, and I'm just looking at it positively.
Kevin, why is it important for him to come off the bench instead of somebody else?
Well, the way our team is made up right now, I just didn't want to have a bench situation where you're bringing in 2 or 3 players that are new to the Big East and new to this level. And Earl's versatility gives us the chance to bring him in either at the 2 or the 1 and bring a guy in here that's going to be a 1,000-point scorer, that's made a lot of big baskets in his career, and that just gives us a lift off the bench. And he's playing the same amount of minutes, it's just in a different role.
Earl, you feel you can give the team energy, spark off the bench?
Yeah, well, that's what I'll try to do. I'll try to come in and make a change in the game. Whether if we're up 5, we want to be up 10. If we're up 15, we want to be up 20. And I just want to make a change in a positive way and not a negative way.
You seem to thrive in the open court style. Do you like it best when Rutgers is playing up-tempo?
Yeah, I mean, of course, it's always good to get up, in the open court. And when you got 2-on-1s and 3-on-1s, get some easy baskets, get some dunks from my teammates.
I guess it is one criticism of Earl Johnson over the past couple of years. It's been the fact that sometimes you dominate and then you get quiet during a ball game. Do you feel consistency is important?
I think consistency is very important, and Coach has explained that to me. And I'm just trying more to be consistent with the things I can control, like my defense and, just staying on guys, on the team and huddling up and just being more vocal on the court.
Kevin, that word consistency sounds easy, but to get a ball player to think the same way as you do all the time, is it difficult?
There's a lot that goes into it, and I think where Earl deserves a lot of credit is he's in the best condition he's ever been in physically. I think he's done a much better job of being verbal and being more of a leader on the court. And I think with those kinds of things comes confidence, and with confidence comes the consistency. So we all know that this guy's had a lot of big moments in a Rutgers uniform, and he's got a whole lot of career ahead of him. So we're pretty excited about what he brings to the table.
Earl has made a number of big shots in his career, and his backcourt mate through much of his years at Rutgers has been Jeff Billet. Talk a little bit about your relationship with Jeff.
I think Jeff's a special kid. I mean, when I came in as a freshman, Jeff, talked to me a lot, and on and off the court. And when he's on the court with you, you just feel at ease that he can handle the ball. And sometimes you get the ball in some guy's hands where you got to rush to go get it back, or you just feel a little uncomfortable. But when Jeff has the ball, you can feel at ease. He can run the play, just as well as you could.
And each of you guys have played the point and the two guard throughout your careers. Rob Hodgson, let's talk about another guy who's really coming on. And I know you like to give him the basketball because lately he's been much more assertive.
Yeah, Rob, I've never seen a four like Rob. Rob can shoot the three. Rob can, as you can see, he can dunk. And Rob's just a special player. He plays very good defense, and what I like about Rob is off the court, he's a lot more, he talks a lot more, he smiles a lot more.
A little more outgoing.
Yeah, he jokes a lot more. He just does a lot more things that he didn't do when I first got here.
Kevin, we've got some great reports about Earl in Hawaii. We heard he was really a bundle of laughs. Had a great time out there.
Did you get the real stories? Or
No.
Okay.
We got some video to share with you, though. And Earl, what was the trip like?
The trip was great. I mean, I've never been to Hawaii before, and we got out to Waikiki and got on the beach and got on some mopeds and went to the luau. As you can see, some of my teammates up there looking a little crazy right now.
That's Rob Hodgson and Connor Fox. And Alvidas Denise, what is he doing here?
Star of the show. I've never seen that like that in my life. And when he came out, it was so hilarious.
The funny thing, Bruce, is Alvidas didn't know what he was volunteered for, and he ended up being the actual star of the show. But look at him, he did a great job.
Looks like he
brought the house down.
And then you went to Pearl Harbor, Earl. This was kind of an interesting experience.
Yeah, well, I mean, Pearl Harbor, some people call me Earl of Pearl, and I like to relate to Pearl Harbor that way. And, it's a historical moment, and I was glad we got a chance to go see it.
All right, Earl, it's a pleasure to see you. We wish you the best of luck this year, whatever your role is. And I know the Scarlet Knights are counting on you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, that's Earl Johnson, starter, sixth man, whatever you want to call. He's a key guy for the Scarlet Knights as a guard this year. We'll take a break. More coming up on the Kevin Bannon Show in just a moment. So you can get a lot of great information at that Rutgers website. Well, the Big East season, believe it or not, really underway because everybody had a chance to play somebody in the league. And, Kevin, it looks like it's going to be a tough one.
Well, we knew, it was going to be a tough league this year, but I think what I predicted was there's going to be more top 20 teams than people. People talk about Connecticut, and that's great, but St. John's is off to a great start. Pitt's had some real quality wins. Syracuse, so I think the league's going to be better than most people think.
And when you look at the standings, you have to understand that most of the games this early in the season are out of conference. You want to try to get those wins because the big goal, making the tournament later in the year.
Oh, absolutely. We're all, in our own ways, finding out about our team and the things that we have to address as we head into conference play.
And certainly the team that stands out thus far, 7-0, UConn, they are just dangerous, #1 in the country, and awesome potential.
They sure do. To have the #1 team in the country in your league is a real feather in your cap. And I think they're going to be there for a long time. There's a lot of answers on that team, a lot of depth, a lot of kids that can play for that team. So they're going to have a great year.
Khalid El-Amin is outstanding. Richard Hamilton might be one of the players of the year in the country. They have so many weapons, Kevin.
Well, you look at it like a kid like Bosco here is just coming on. Look at Kevin Freeman. Has a lot of career left in him. El-Amin, sophomore, scary. Glad we're only playing him once this year.
But I tell you, I think it's a feather in the cap. I really agree with that. It's very positive for the league, and you got something to talk about all the time. All right, we've got a new part to the program. It's called the Hoop of the Week. And throughout the season, we'll see some maybe area code jumpers and also some power moves.
What about your layup and your foul shooting at Midnight Madness?
I hit the first 2, and then I went in the toilet and missed the next 3. All right, here's a look at the Hoop of the Week, and it's brought to you by Dunkin' Donuts. And this is a little unusual, seeing Rob Hodgson make a move to the basket, Kevin.
It is fun. Rob shot fake there because you have to respect his shot. And he baseline and crushes one on the baseline, and the bench erupted, and you have to know Rob to appreciate that. He's a great athlete, but he doesn't get a chance to do this a whole lot. So for him to do this in the game, and the kids just responded so positively. It was a big basket in the second half for us.
And it is the Dunkin' Donuts Hoop of the Week, and he took some pretty good ribbing for it. Nice move by Rob Hodgson, who's shooting it great from trifecta land, but doesn't go to the hoop that authoritative that often. We'll take a short break. More coming up, including some final thoughts with the coach. Stay with us. Big East basketball this week for the Scarlet Knights of Rutgers. They take on Providence at the Rack Friday night, 7 o'clock. A good crowd is expected, so if you don't have tickets, you better get out there and buy them right now. And this ball game early on, but another conference game, and your first conference game at home, Kevin, how important?
Very important. I mean, we play 2 conference games in December. You want to get off to a good start. And we got a tough Providence team coming into our place, but as you mentioned, our crowds have been tremendous. We always have a great home court advantage. I think our team's coming on, so we want to try to get this W and see if we can't go into the new year as a 2-0 Big East team.
And with Temple and Princeton on the horizon, you want to get this W, don't you?
How the heck do you do your Christmas shopping when you're thinking about Providence,
terrible.
Temple, and Princeton? That could ruin your whole holidays right there.
Coach, have some good holidays. We'll have more to talk about that in the days ahead, and it's been a fun start to the season.
Thanks, Bruce. You too.
All right, that's it for the Kevin Bannon Show. I'm Bruce Beck. Thanks for joining us. See you next week, everybody.
And he's made the rounds. He started as 17 of note downtown Piscataway at the Lewis Brown Athletic Center. In a Big East matchup, Rutgers defeated Providence 72-67. Former Iona coach Tim Welsh, now the head coach at Providence. Second half, Providence by 1, and senior Jeff Billet from downtown hits the 3, becoming the Rutgers all-time leader in threes with 197. He had 17 points. Game tied at 57. Jamel Thomas of Providence with that air ball. Now Billet will push it up court to Dante Jones, and watch these moves. Off the fake, on the drive, he hits. Jones with a career high of 19 for the freshman, and Rutgers beat Providence 72-67. A strong start for the Scarlet Knights, 2-0 in the Big East with wins over Georgetown, and now Providence overall, they are 7-1. Now to our national
school's history to win their 7th game, trying to stop them, Providence Friars. Rutgers coach Kevin Bannon seeming to enjoy himself. I guess that's why here in the second half, for good reason. Scarlet Knights trailing by 1. Jeff Billet from 3 loads and fires the bullseye. Knights go up a deuce. A little bit later, score tied 57. Freshman Dante Jones up and in 2 of his 19. Rutgers goes on from there to win at 72-67. Scarlet Knights now 7-1 on the season.
Hey, without the NBA, I'm like
6-1 and looking to start 2-0 for the first time ever in the Big East. Providence in the house, and so was Rashad Kent. He gets the nice reverse floater. Providence coach Tim Welsh said, I don't believe that. That's the agony of defeat. Rutgers' Jeff Greer gives his coach a 3, and the thrill of victory. Rutgers wins again 72-67. Hey, a team of U.S. golf.
Corey Wright handles the rock, sends some airmail back to Thomas. He skies for the bucket. Friars by 4 at the break. Rutgers took control of the second half with a 13-2 run. Freshman Dante Jones to the hoop for 2 of his game-high 19 points. Senior guard Jeff Billet broke a school record with his 197th career three-pointer. 2.5 minutes left. Scarlet Knights by 5. Billet goes up for the steal. Jeff Greer knocks home the 3 to ice the game. Rutgers won 72-67. They're 2-0 in conference play. The Jets can clinch.
the eve of the inevitable. Can anyone keep Ricky Williams from winning?
And Tuesday night's 83-80 loss, Notre Dame left Welsh so upset he couldn't sleep. Wednesday night wasn't any better. Welsh said he hoped he could grab a couple of winks on the bus trip down to Rutgers for tonight's game. But Rutgers may not be the team to provide a sleeping pill. With 7 new players on its roster, Rutgers off to a 6-1 start. Jamel Thomas, 24.9 points per game is his average, leading scorer in the Big East, taking on the freshman Dante Jones. Jones strips Thomas and sprints ahead for the easy 2, and that's only the beginning. Thomas travels down low. Remember, we're talking about the highest score so far in the Big East. Loses it out of bounds. Jones pressures Thomas on this sequence into the throwaway. Thomas then gets stuck in the air. He's got nowhere to go. Thomas then would lose the dribble. 5 turnovers. He went just for 1 for 4 from the field in the first half. Second half, Jones draws a charge. Then hounding the dribble. Blocks the shot. Dante Jones, an incredible performance. Just a freshman. Gets a hand in the face, causes an air ball. Thomas went just 5 of 13 from the floor, scored just 13 points. Completely off his game. With just over a minute left, it was over as Rutgers goes on to win by the final score of 72-67. There could be more sleepless nights ahead for Coach Welsh. The freshman Dante Jones also scored a career-high 19, but you saw his great defensive work throughout that highlight on Jamel Thomas. Thomas also committed 10 turnovers, and we mentioned he scored just 13 points. Rutgers now 7-1 for the first time since 82-83.
Talks last night. They're supposed second half. Freshman Dante Jones with 2 of his game-high 19. Rutgers taking a 2-point lead. Then 2:25 left. Jeff Greer from Washington Heights for 3. Coach Kevin Bannon now 2-0 in the Big East. 7-1 overall. It's their best start in 16 years make it. 72-67 the final for Rutgers. The winter baseball meetings are
college ball tonight in Piscataway. Rutgers now 7-1. Came from behind in the second half and beat Providence 72-67. Let's go to the videotape. In the first half, Jeff Greer of Rutgers, and he puts it in. But going the other way, Jamal Thomas to Corey Wright. Back to Thomas with 13. Providence by 6 at the half. But second half, Jeff Billet sets the Rutgers career record, 197 three-pointers. Rutgers by 5. Second round of the President's
basketball tight in Piscataway tonight as Rutgers hosted Providence, and the former Iona coach Tim Welsh, who's now in charge of the Friars. Providence got off to a strong start on the break. Watch this beauty. Alley-oop from Corey Wright to Jamel Thomas. Providence led 35-29 at the break. All Rutgers second half, though. Jeff Billet got the takeaway. Then to a wide-open Jeff Greer. Drills the 3. Rutgers wins 72-67. That's 5 straight. It may go down